Imagine standing before colossal stone structures, carved and arranged with a precision that seems impossible for their time. Monuments that have withstood millennia, yet whose origins remain shrouded in mystery. Across deserts, mountains, and forgotten landscapes, ancient builders left behind puzzles of staggering complexity, their techniques lost to history. How were these immense constructions raised without modern tools? Who were the minds capable of shaping such enduring legacies? From enigmatic tombs to massive, unexplained walls, each discovery challenges everything we think we know about human history. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into 3 hours of prehistoric marvels that defy explanation. Nestled deep within the rugged, sun-scorched canyons of northern Jordan, Wadi Wisad pools emerges like an oasis suspended in time. The sound of trickling water echoes softly against sheer cliffs, while sunlight dances across still turquoise pools, reflecting the jagged rock formations that rise above them like silent sentinels. Here, nature seems to pause, as though guarding a secret long forgotten by the modern world. The pools themselves vary in size, some small enough to cradle a single traveler, others wide and deep, their origins elusive, their edges smoothed by centuries of erosion. Every ripple, every stone, seems to carry a story waiting to be discovered. The history of the region is as layered as the cliffs themselves. Archaeologists have traced signs of human activity in nearby valleys back to the Neolithic period, over 8,000 years ago. Ancient pathways hint that Wadi Wisad may have served as a crucial stopover for early communities navigating the harsh desert terrain. Its waters, scarce yet vital, would have been a beacon for survival. Pottery shards, rudimentary tools, and occasional remnants of settlements suggest that humans were drawn here repeatedly, generation after generation. Yet the pools themselves remain curiously untouched by permanent structures, as though the landscape resists full domination by human hands. What makes Wadi Wisad especially intriguing is not just its natural beauty, but the subtle strangeness of the formations around it. Some rocks appear unnaturally carved, as if shaped with intent, yet no records exist of large-scale quarrying in this remote area. Pools appear at irregular intervals, with no obvious geological explanation for their precise locations or depths. How did water find these pockets in such an arid terrain? Could there have been an ancient understanding of subterranean channels, now lost to time? The more one studies the Wadi, the more questions arise, as though the pools themselves are holding their secrets deliberately, revealed only to those willing to look closely. Local lore adds another layer to the mystery. Bedouin stories speak of pools that appear and vanish with the seasons, of hidden passages behind waterfalls, and of voices carried by the wind that echo the distant past. Scholars approach these tales with caution, yet they underscore the enduring fascination of the place. Is it possible that the Wadi's seemingly irregular layout conceals patterns, alignments, or knowledge we are only beginning to comprehend? Might these pools have held ritual significance, serving as more than just sources of water? Geological surveys offer one explanation. Erosion and underground springs over millennia may have created the pools, a natural phenomenon shaped by the slow, patient forces of nature. Yet even these studies leave gaps. Why are some pools deeper than expected, their beds unusually smooth, their edges forming near perfect curves? Could these features result purely from natural forces, or do they hint at subtle human intervention, lost to history? The line between natural and artificial blurs, leaving observers suspended in uncertainty. As the sun dips behind the cliffs, casting elongated shadows across the water, the Wadi takes on an almost otherworldly atmosphere. Mist rises from the pools, carrying the faint scent of minerals and earth, while the faint rustle of unseen wildlife punctuates the silence. Standing here, one is acutely aware of the passage of time, millennia of wind, water, and human curiosity converging in a single, enigmatic landscape. It is a place where history is tangible, yet incomplete, where facts coexist with speculation, where every glance seems to promise discovery, and yet delivers only more questions. Who first discovered Wadi Wisad? Why were these pools left largely undisturbed while the surrounding valleys saw human habitation? And what secrets might still lie beneath their placid surfaces, waiting for someone to uncover them? Here, at the intersection of nature and human history, certainty is elusive, and the mystery remains alive, inviting those who visit to ponder, quietly and carefully, the stories that have yet to be told. From the quiet, reflective waters of Wadi Wisad pools, we shift our gaze across continents, journeying thousands of miles to the lush, tropical landscapes of southwestern Nigeria. Here, amidst dense forests and gently rolling hills, lies one of the most extraordinary yet little-known feats of prehistoric engineering: Sungbo's Eredo. At first glance, it may appear as a simple boundary of earth and stone, but as one moves closer, the scale of the endeavor becomes impossible to ignore. Stretching over 160 kilometers in total, the Eredo consists of massive walls, trenches, and ramparts that enclose a vast swath of land, a structure so immense that it rivals some of the greatest ancient constructions of the world. The walls themselves are formidable. Earth was dug from wide trenches and piled high into banks, sometimes reaching heights of up to 20 meters, their bases sprawling tens of meters in width. In places, the earthworks form continuous, winding lines that curve around hills and valleys, following no immediately obvious pattern. Standing at the edge of one rampart, one can almost feel the weight of the countless hands, generations of laborers who must have toiled for years to move the enormous quantities of soil required. Yet no written records survive to explain exactly why this monumental structure was built, or how the logistics of its construction were managed without the benefit of modern tools. Archaeologists suggest that the Eredo may have served defensive purposes, a barrier against rival groups or invaders. Others see it as a symbol of power and authority, a demonstration of the organizational capacity of the Yoruba people who inhabited this region centuries ago. Oral traditions link the Eredo to the legendary Queen Oloye Bilikisu Sungbo, said to have ruled the area in the 10th century AD. Stories describe her as a wealthy and powerful figure who commissioned the walls as both a protection for her people and a testament to her influence. Yet, despite these connections, much about the Eredo remains puzzling. Why was such a massive structure necessary in a landscape where other communities thrived without comparable fortifications? And why does it follow such irregular, sinuous paths instead of simple, straight lines? The more one studies Sungbo's Eredo, the more subtle anomalies emerge. Certain sections rise unusually high, with embankments curving around natural features in ways that suggest careful planning rather than purely defensive intent. Some stretches of the trenches contain deposits that hint at ritual use, perhaps ceremonial in nature. Could the Eredo have been a boundary not just of territory, but of spiritual significance? Were the walls designed to align with celestial events, local waterways, or hidden natural resources? And if so, what knowledge guided its builders? Knowledge that has since been lost to time. The construction techniques themselves remain a source of intrigue. Moving and shaping millions of cubic meters of earth would have required careful organization, perhaps involving thousands of laborers coordinated over decades. How were such efforts sustained in a pre-industrial society? Some historians propose that the labor was conscripted through social obligations or communal organization, yet the scale of the Eredo suggests more than simple manpower. It implies a sophisticated understanding of logistics, planning, and perhaps even surveying. Local legends further deepen the mystery. Villagers speak of hidden tunnels and chambers within the earthworks, spaces said to contain treasures or sacred relics. While modern excavation has yet to confirm these claims, the stories persist, a reminder of the human imagination's ability to intertwine history and myth. In some accounts, it is said that the Eredo was built in a single night through the aid of supernatural forces, a tale that, though clearly symbolic, underscores the awe the structure inspires. What could have driven people to imagine such an extraordinary feat as the work of magic? Perhaps it was only awe at the actual human achievement, preserved and magnified in the oral tradition. Geologically, the region presents its own challenges. The soil, while workable, is interspersed with rocky outcrops and uneven terrain, yet the embankments maintain remarkable consistency across valleys, ridges, and plateaus. Could there have been methods of compaction, transportation, and structural reinforcement that predate known engineering practices in the area? Were there techniques developed locally that allowed ancient builders to achieve stability and durability on such a massive scale long before written records documented them? Each answer seems to prompt yet another question, leaving researchers oscillating between the plausible and the improbable. As one walks along the ancient banks of the Eredo, the sense of scale is overwhelming. Trees rise from the top of embankments, their roots gripping centuries-old soil, while shadows stretch across deep trenches, revealing the contours of a civilization long gone. There is a quiet majesty here, a reminder of human determination and ingenuity. Yet for all the physical evidence, for all the archaeological surveys and oral histories, Sungbo's Eredo retains an air of mystery. Its full purpose remains elusive, its origins partly obscured, and its true significance still debated. Perhaps the greatest fascination lies in its continuity across time. Unlike some ancient ruins, the Eredo has never been entirely abandoned or forgotten. Local communities still interact with the land, maintaining a connection that stretches back centuries. What did those early builders see in this terrain that compelled them to reshape it on such an enormous scale? Were they marking boundaries, performing rituals, or leaving a message for future generations? Or is it possible that their motives, clear to them, are now irretrievably lost to us? As sunlight filters through the forest canopy and the cool wind whispers along the embankments, one cannot help but pause and reflect. Sungbo's Eredo stands as both a monument and a mystery, a testament to human labor and imagination, yet a puzzle whose full meaning remains just out of reach. The earth itself seems to guard its secrets, and we are left to wonder what else might lie hidden beneath these vast walls, waiting silently for someone to uncover it. From the sprawling forests of Nigeria, we now turn our attention eastward, across deserts and mountains, to the arid expanse of northwestern Arabia. Here, under the relentless sun and within seemingly endless stretches of sand and gravel, lie some of the most enigmatic constructions of the prehistoric world, the Mustatil structures. At first glance, they may appear deceptively simple, long rectangular platforms of stone stretching across the desert floor, often over 600 meters in length and bordered by low walls. But a closer look reveals an intricate pattern of deliberate design, a silent testament to human intention thousands of years ago. Mustatils, whose name means rectangle in Arabic, are often accompanied by carefully constructed stone chambers at one end, and in some instances, traces of enclosures or ritual spaces surrounding them. From above, these formations form geometric lines that defy the randomness of nature, yet their purpose remains a profound mystery. The sheer scale is staggering, moving countless tons of stone across harsh desert terrain, organizing it into linear shapes that can be seen for kilometers, required planning, labor, and coordination beyond what many would assume possible for the time. What drove these communities to undertake such immense projects, and what meaning did these formations hold for those who built them? Archaeologists date the Mustatil structures to around 5000 BC, placing them in the late Neolithic period. This was a time when nomadic groups were beginning to establish more permanent settlements, cultivating the land, domesticating animals, and forging early social hierarchies. Yet, unlike other prehistoric constructions, Mustatils appear largely isolated from habitation sites. Their purpose does not seem to have been defensive, nor do they align with known trade routes or agricultural hubs. Instead, the uniformity of their design and the presence of ritualistic chambers suggest that these structures may have been ceremonial in nature. Could they have been sites of collective gatherings, offerings, or rites of passage, etched into the desert to connect the living with unseen forces? The distribution of Mustatils across the desert adds another layer of intrigue. Hundreds of these structures have been mapped over vast areas, often appearing in clusters yet occasionally standing alone. Their placement sometimes follows subtle topographical features, rising on low ridges or nestled in valleys, perhaps to interact with the landscape in ways we do not yet understand. Were these choices purely practical, related to stone availability or drainage? Or might they reflect an ancient understanding of geography, astronomy, or even spiritual symbolism? The stones themselves are unworked, simple in form, yet their arrangement communicates an intentionality that is hard to dismiss. Local climate and geography further complicate the picture. The desert today is harsh and unforgiving, but 7,000 years ago, it was far more hospitable. Grassy plains, seasonal watercourses, and a climate that could support larger populations. In this context, Mustatils may have functioned as landmarks, ritual centers, or social focal points for dispersed communities. Yet even with this understanding, many questions remain. Why were these enormous rectangular forms repeated with such consistency across the landscape? Why the meticulous alignment of walls and enclosures when no defensive or agricultural function seems necessary? Some researchers have speculated that the Mustatils were part of an early religious landscape, a physical expression of belief systems that are otherwise lost to history. The ritual chambers, often found at one end of the rectangles, may have served as sites for offerings, burials, or other ceremonial acts. Could these structures mark sacred paths, invisible connections between places of spiritual significance? Were they designed to interact with celestial events, like the rising sun on the solstice, or with seasonal cycles of water and vegetation? Without written records, each theory remains conjectural, yet each possibility invites us to imagine the complex social and spiritual life of these early communities. The simplicity of the stones belies the complexity of human effort involved. Moving these unshaped rocks across uneven desert terrain would have required coordination, endurance, and planning, an organization that hints at social cohesion and shared purpose. How did these early communities manage such large-scale projects without permanent settlements or hierarchical governance as we understand it today? Were the Mustatils the product of local leaders or of communal effort, a collective expression of belief and identity? And if these structures were central to spiritual life, what happened to the traditions that inspired them? As one walks along the edges of a Mustatil today, the experience is quietly humbling. The desert wind carries a weight of silence, broken only by the occasional scuff of sand or the distant cry of a bird. The rectangles stretch on, fading into the horizon, their presence simultaneously imposing and understated. There is no inscription, no marker, no obvious indication of the hands that built them. Yet their existence speaks to human curiosity, persistence, and imagination. For all their clarity of form, they resist interpretation, leaving observers to confront the limits of our understanding of the past. Perhaps the most captivating aspect of Mustatils is their enduring mystery. Unlike monuments in more accessible regions, these structures remain largely isolated, their full scale only revealed through aerial surveys and satellite imagery. What secrets lie buried in the chambers at their ends? What rituals took place here, and what beliefs guided their construction? The desert holds its silence, offering hints but never complete answers, leaving us to ponder what inspired these ancient builders to transform the landscape in such a deliberate, enduring way. Standing before a Mustatil, one cannot help but feel a sense of awe, tempered by the quiet realization that much of human history remains obscured. These rectangles, stretching across the sands of Arabia, remind us that our ancestors were capable of extraordinary feats, guided by knowledge, belief, and purpose that may never fully be understood. And so, as the sun casts long shadows across the desert floor, we are left with questions rather than answers, and an enduring curiosity. What other stories are etched into the earth, waiting for us to discover them? From the endless deserts of northwestern Arabia, where Mustatil structures stretch silently across the sands, our journey turns once again, this time to the dense, verdant heart of the Amazon basin, a realm where sunlight filters through an almost impenetrable canopy and the air hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth and thriving life. Here, hidden deep within the labyrinth of rivers, swamps, and jungle, lies a site whispered about by explorers and indigenous communities alike. La Ciudad Perdida del Fuego, the lost city of fire. The very name evokes wonder, a place where human ingenuity once met the untamed wilderness, leaving behind traces that challenge our understanding of pre-Columbian civilizations. The first glimpse of the city, for those fortunate enough to penetrate the dense undergrowth, is mesmerizing. Terraces rise from the forest floor, carefully leveled and bordered by stone retaining walls. Pathways, once bustling with foot traffic, wind through the site in a deliberate arrangement, suggesting organization and purpose. Though overgrown with centuries of vegetation, the remnants of plazas, foundations, and possibly ceremonial spaces hint at a society that was far more complex than previously imagined. Water channels, ingeniously carved, carry rainfall and stream flow across the terraces, a testament to advanced engineering in harmony with the natural environment. Archaeologists studying the site estimate its origins may date back as far as 500 BC, though some artifacts and oral histories suggest earlier occupation. What makes La Ciudad Perdida del Fuego so compelling is not just its age, but the precision with which its structures were constructed and arranged. Unlike many other settlements of the Amazon, which often leave only scattered artifacts, this city exhibits a spatial coherence and architectural intentionality that points to a highly organized society, one capable of large-scale coordination in a region where the dense jungle would have made communication and logistics extraordinarily challenging. Yet, for all the evidence of human ingenuity, much about the city remains enigmatic. Why was it abandoned? How could such a significant settlement, with its terraces, roads, and waterworks, disappear almost entirely from collective memory? Some speculate that environmental changes, perhaps shifts in river courses or prolonged droughts, made the area less sustainable for permanent habitation. Others suggest social upheaval, conflict, or disease might have driven residents away. And still, there are elements that resist explanation altogether. Stone platforms whose alignment seems to echo celestial patterns, enigmatic carvings whose purpose remains unknown, and fire pits that appear ritualistic rather than practical, lending the city its evocative name. Local legends provide another layer of intrigue. Indigenous communities speak of a city of fire, illuminated at night by eternal flames or glowing embers, a place visited by spirits or powerful ancestors. While these tales may be symbolic, they underscore the city's profound presence in cultural memory and hint at ceremonial significance beyond mere survival or habitation. Could the terraces and plazas have been stages for elaborate rituals? or sites where astronomical or seasonal observations were recorded? And if so, what knowledge might the city's builders have possessed, now lost to the centuries? The logistics of constructing La Ciudad Perdida del Fuego are equally remarkable. Moving stone, shaping terraces, and maintaining pathways in such a challenging environment would have demanded sophisticated knowledge of terrain, water management, and cooperative labor. How did a society without the wheel or large draft animals achieve such precision and scale? Were there previously unrecognized forms of engineering, surveying, and organizational methods at play passed down through generations and now vanished? These questions linger, emphasizing the delicate balance between nature and human effort evident at the site. Geographically, the city's location is both strategic and puzzling. Situated near tributaries of the Amazon, it afforded access to water, food resources, and transportation routes, yet it is remarkably secluded, shielded by the surrounding rainforest. Was its placement chosen deliberately for defense, spiritual significance, or perhaps to align with regional trade networks? The more researchers explore, the more patterns emerge. Lines of stone walls, clusters of foundations, terraces arranged in ways that suggest both functionality and symbolism. Every detail invites deeper inquiry, yet definitive answers remain frustratingly out of reach. The overgrowth itself adds to the mystery. Trees with massive buttress roots twist around stone walls, concealing the city's scale until the observer is standing within it. Vines drape over terraces, and moss carpets ancient platforms, blending human creation seamlessly into the natural world. In this environment, it is easy to sense the passage of centuries, the resilience of both nature and memory, and the faint echoes of lives once lived here. Even today, the city exudes a quiet majesty, a reminder that human ambition can endure in form long after its creators have vanished. As one moves through the terraces and plazas, a sense of awe is inevitable. The lost city of fire is not merely a collection of ruins. It is a reflection of human curiosity, perseverance, and ingenuity, existing in dialogue with the forest around it. And yet, for all its traces of civilization, it remains largely inaccessible, its full extent only recently revealed through satellite imagery and careful exploration. What else lies hidden beneath the canopy? Forgotten buildings, buried artifacts, or perhaps clues to the city's sudden disappearance? What stories were left untold, preserved only in stone and soil? Here, as the sunlight slants through the dense foliage, illuminating the terraces in a golden haze, one is left to consider the fragility and endurance of human achievement. La Ciudad Perdida del Fuego reminds us that even in places seemingly lost to time and wilderness, traces of ingenuity and culture persist, waiting for discovery. And while much has been uncovered, the city continues to guard its deepest secrets, inviting researchers and explorers alike to ponder what knowledge, rituals, and stories remain hidden here just beyond our reach. From the lush, hidden terraces of La Ciudad Perdida del Fuego, we now turn our gaze northward to a land of stark contrasts and severe climates, the remote heart of southern Siberia. Here, nestled on an island in the middle of Lake Terrakol in the Tuva Republic, lies Por-Bazhyn, a structure as enigmatic as it is isolated, its square walls rising sharply against the backdrop of wind-swept steppes and distant mountain ranges. From above, the site presents a striking geometric form, a nearly perfect square, its perimeter defined by earthen and clay walls, enclosing a complex network of internal courtyards and buildings. In a landscape dominated by nature's unpredictability, Por-Bazhyn's order and precision are arresting, immediately hinting at a purpose both deliberate and extraordinary. The first impression of the site is one of stark solitude. The winds sweep across the island, carrying whispers of centuries past, while the surrounding lake reflects the muted colors of the Siberian sky. Despite the remote setting, The scale and design of Por-Bazhyn suggest considerable planning and labor. Its walls, up to 2 meters thick in some areas, enclose a space approximately 220 by 220 meters, and within, traces of what appear to be buildings, courtyards, and ceremonial spaces have been identified. The symmetry and alignment of the site suggest knowledge of surveying and architectural principles that seem surprisingly sophisticated for its time. Radiocarbon dating and archaeological analysis indicate that Por-Bazhyn was constructed around 770 AD during the period of the Uyghur Khaganate, a time when nomadic empires dominated vast stretches of Central Asia. Yet the site's exact purpose remains uncertain. Some scholars suggest it was a fortress, built to assert control over trade routes or defend a strategic position on the lake. Others propose it functioned as a ceremonial complex, possibly serving as a summer palace, a monastery, or a place of ritual significance. The combination of fortification-like walls with interior spaces that appear unsuitable for defense only deepens the mystery. Was Por-Bazhyn built to be lived in, to be worshipped in, or both? The construction techniques themselves pose questions. The walls consist of clay and stone, carefully compacted to form a durable barrier against both time and the elements. Foundations indicate knowledge of load distribution and structural stability, even in a region prone to freeze-thaw cycles that would challenge less meticulously engineered buildings. How did a society, largely reliant on nomadic traditions, marshal the labor, resources, and expertise to build such a structure on a remote lake island? The effort required would have been immense, hinting at a centralized authority, a compelling motivation, or a spiritual imperative strong enough to mobilize a community for this monumental task. Excavations have revealed more puzzles. Inside the walls, the arrangement of buildings does not conform neatly to military logic. Some rooms are unusually large, others unexpectedly small, and the layout includes open courtyards that would have been exposed to harsh Siberian winds and winters. Were these spaces intended for ceremonial gatherings, administrative functions, or seasonal habitation? The discovery of pottery, animal bones, and fragments of tools indicates that humans did inhabit the site, yet evidence of prolonged occupation is sparse. Por-Bazhyn appears to have been used intensively but briefly, raising questions about its abandonment. Why invest so much effort in such a remote and challenging location only to leave it within a few decades? Local legends and regional lore add another layer to the intrigue. Though sparse, oral histories speak of hidden places of power, remote sanctuaries, and sacred islands imbued with spiritual significance. Could Por-Bazhyn have been intentionally positioned on an island as part of a cosmological or ritual vision, a space deliberately separated from the mundane world? Its location, perfectly framed by the surrounding lake and distant peaks, seems to invite speculation about alignment with celestial events or seasonal cycles. The possibility that the structure served dual purposes, both earthly and spiritual, remains tantalizing, if unconfirmed. The site's preservation is remarkable, considering Siberia's harsh climate and its exposure to centuries of natural forces. From the air, the symmetry of Por-Bazhyn stands out even today, a square island of human design in a sea of organic randomness. The contrast between human order and natural chaos is striking. While the surrounding forests, wetlands, and mountains have been shaped primarily by time and climate, Por-Bazhyn speaks to a human ambition to impose structure, purpose, and meaning onto a landscape otherwise indifferent to human presence. Walking along the remaining walls, one senses both ingenuity and mystery. Every stone, every compacted layer of clay, is evidence of an intention that is tangible yet incompletely understood. Why was Por-Bazhyn abandoned? What ceremonies, rituals, or events once unfolded within its walls? And perhaps most hauntingly, what knowledge guided its creators? Knowledge that allowed them to build a structure both resilient and precise, yet is now almost entirely lost to history. As the sun dips low over Lake Hohle, casting long reflections across the water and illuminating the island's geometric perfection, the enigma of Por-Bazhyn becomes almost palpable. It is a site where human ambition, environmental challenge, and time converge, leaving behind traces that inspire awe, curiosity, and reflection. And while archaeologists continue to piece together fragments of its story, much remains uncertain. The island guards its secrets with quiet determination, offering glimpses into a past that was remarkable, fleeting, and, ultimately, still largely unexplained. Por-Bazhyn reminds us that even in the most remote and inhospitable regions, human ingenuity has left enduring marks, monuments to knowledge, ambition, and purpose that can survive centuries of isolation. And yet, with each unanswered question, with each shadowed corner of the site, we are reminded of the limits of our understanding. What else lies beneath its foundations, buried in the soil or hidden in the intentions of those who built it? What stories, rituals, and wisdom have slipped into obscurity, leaving only this square island as a testament to their existence? From the remote, windswept island of Por-Bazhyn in Siberia, where geometric precision meets isolation, we now journey across continents and oceans to the tropical lowlands of Costa Rica. Here, amid rolling hills, fertile plains, and lush rainforests, lie the enigmatic Diquís stone spheres, an astonishing series of prehistoric artifacts that continue to intrigue archaeologists, historians, and visitors alike. Unlike walls, terraces, or fortifications, these structures are deceptively simple in form, yet profoundly mysterious in purpose. Nearly perfect spheres of stone, some weighing several tons, scattered across fields, plazas, and settlements, their origins shrouded in centuries of uncertainty. The first encounter with these spheres is mesmerizing. Some sit solitary on grassy slopes, catching sunlight as if deliberately positioned. Others form clusters, suggesting patterns or alignments, while a few are discovered partially buried, revealing only a hint of the geometric perfection beneath. Crafted from igneous rock, basalt, gabbro, and granodiorite, their surfaces are remarkably smooth, their contours precise, their dimensions ranging from a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter. Standing before one is struck by the extraordinary skill required, shaping massive stones into near-perfect spheres without the benefit of metal tools or modern machinery, a testament to the ingenuity and perseverance of the Diquís culture. Archaeological evidence places the creation of these spheres between 500 AD and 1500 AD, during the height of pre-Columbian societies in the region. The spheres are most closely associated with the Diquís Delta and the Taraba River Basin, areas that supported thriving communities engaged in agriculture, trade, and complex social organization. Yet despite their prominence, the purpose of the spheres remains elusive. Were they markers of status, symbols of power, or territorial boundaries? Did they serve ceremonial or astronomical functions, aligning with solstices, equinoxes, or other celestial events? The precision with which some spheres appear to align along straight lines and geometric arrangements suggests that they were more than mere decoration, but their exact meaning remains uncertain. The methods of construction continue to puzzle researchers. The stones, sometimes transported over kilometers, were worked with tools likely made of harder stone or wood, yet the skill required to achieve near-perfect symmetry raises questions about lost techniques or knowledge. How did the Diquís people measure, shape, and move these immense spheres with such accuracy? Were there specific rituals or communal efforts dedicated to their creation, a process as symbolic as it was practical? And why devote so much effort to objects whose purpose is not immediately apparent to outsiders? Patterns in their placement add further intrigue. Many spheres are found in clusters near ancient settlements or ceremonial sites, while others appear to be scattered in ways that may suggest mapping, alignment, or even symbolic representation of cosmological concepts. Some researchers propose that the spheres marked sacred spaces, acting as guardians or focal points for ritual activity. Others argue they may have been tools for social organization, indicators of wealth or rank, or even representations of astronomical knowledge encoded in stone. Yet, without written records, these theories remain speculative, leaving each observer to interpret their silent message. Local oral histories and indigenous narratives offer additional hints. The spheres are often associated with stories of spirits, guardians, and the ancestors, with legends describing them as living objects, imbued with meaning and agency. Such tales, while unverifiable, underscore the cultural significance of the spheres and hint at a worldview in which natural and human-made forms were intertwined, and where the creation of monumental objects was both a spiritual and social act. Could the Diquís have viewed the spheres not merely as art or utility, but as vessels of power or connection between the earthly and the divine? The environment itself presents both challenges and clues. Situated in a tropical landscape prone to heavy rainfall, dense vegetation, and seasonal flooding, the sphere's enduring presence is remarkable. Many have survived centuries of erosion, agriculture, and human disturbance, suggesting that they were intentionally placed in locations that afforded both visibility and preservation. Some spheres appear aligned with rivers, hills, or other natural landmarks, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of topography and geography, as well as an ability to manipulate the environment in symbolic and functional ways. Yet for all the study, the Diquís stone spheres continue to guard their deepest secrets. The more we examine their precision, their placement, and the apparent care with which they were crafted, the more questions emerge. How many spheres have been lost to time, buried beneath the jungle floor, or quarried for modern construction? Were these objects once part of a larger network of structures, rituals, and social codes now invisible to us? And most compelling of all, what knowledge, beliefs, or cultural imperatives inspired their creation, driving human hands to shape stone into perfect geometry without any apparent utilitarian necessity? Walking among the spheres today, one cannot help but feel the weight of time and intention. Each stone is at once simple and profound, a silent witness to a civilization's creativity, labor, and worldview. The spheres command attention without speaking, leaving visitors to contemplate the minds that conceived them and the societies that revered them. They challenge our assumptions about prehistoric cultures, prompting reflection on the capabilities and sophistication of societies long vanished, yet still resonating through their enduring monuments. As the sun dips low over the Diquís Delta, casting long shadows across the grassy plains and illuminating the spheres in golden light, the mystery lingers. These objects, precise and silent, remind us that even in seemingly simple forms, human ingenuity and intention can leave a legacy that defies explanation. And while researchers continue to study, measure, and theorize, the spheres guard their secrets, inviting us to wonder what stories, rituals, and knowledge have been encoded in these stones, and what remains hidden just beyond our grasp. From the meticulously shaped Diquís stone spheres of Costa Rica, where geometry and mystery intertwine in the tropical lowlands, our journey moves deeper into South America to the northern reaches of Brazil. Here, amid dense rainforests, winding rivers, and humid coastal plains, lie the Calçoene megaliths, ancient monuments that rise quietly from the earth, their presence both commanding and enigmatic. Unlike the spherical stones we recently explored, these structures take the form of upright monoliths, standing in deliberate patterns across the landscape, their weathered surfaces hinting at the passage of millennia. The first impression is striking. Some stones are over 3 meters tall, others smaller, yet each shares a sense of intentional placement. They often appear in linear arrangements or clusters, suggesting a plan or design rather than random distribution. Moss, vines, and the dense forest floor partially obscure them, softening their impact yet emphasizing their endurance in a region where the tropical climate rapidly reclaims human constructions. Walking among these monoliths, one senses both the weight of history and the deliberate human presence that shaped them, a presence now silent but still palpable. Archaeologists estimate that the Calçoene megaliths may date back over 2,000 years, possibly even earlier, situating them in the late pre-Columbian period of northern South America. The sites are associated with indigenous groups who inhabited the region long before European contact, yet there are no written records to explain the stone's purpose, construction methods, or cultural significance. The lack of accompanying artifacts, such as pottery or tools, at some locations adds to the mystery, suggesting that the stones themselves may have carried symbolic, ceremonial, or astronomical meaning, independent of permanent settlements. The sheer scale of the monoliths raises immediate questions. How were these enormous stones quarried, transported, and positioned without the wheel or draft animals? Some weigh several tons, yet they were moved across uneven forested terrain with remarkable precision. Was their placement guided by ritual, astronomy, or geography? Could the alignments correspond to solstices, celestial bodies, or seasonal cycles important to the societies that erected them? And if so, what knowledge of the heavens did these early people possess that allowed them to integrate it into such monumental work? Patterns in placement further deepen the enigma. Certain sites display stones arranged in pairs or rows, some forming geometric figures visible only when viewed collectively, hinting at a conceptual design that may no longer be fully legible. Some researchers propose that the stones were markers of sacred spaces or territorial boundaries, while others suggest they may have been ceremonial centers, locations for rituals tied to fertility, harvest, or cosmology. Yet each hypothesis remains tentative, as tangible evidence of their function, such as inscriptions or domestic artifacts, is rare or absent. The construction techniques themselves are a testament to human ingenuity. Carving and moving massive stones using only rudimentary tools, likely of wood or stone, would have required both ingenuity and sustained communal effort. Were the monoliths transported on logs, dragged over prepared tracks, or maneuvered with ropes and human coordination? The effort implies social organization, specialized knowledge, and a shared purpose that elevated the stones beyond mere decoration. And yet, in the absence of definitive historical records, the full scope of their significance is tantalizingly out of reach. Local legends and indigenous narratives offer further hints. Oral histories speak of spirits, ancestors, and sacred landscapes where stones were alive with power, markers of connection between the living and unseen forces. These accounts, passed down over generations, reinforce the notion that the Calçoene megaliths were more than functional monuments. They were imbued with meaning, an intersection of human belief, labor, and the natural world. Could these stones have been intentionally placed to align with rivers, mountains, or natural clearings as part of a broader spiritual or environmental vision? The environment itself adds to the challenge of understanding. The tropical climate, with heavy rains and rapid vegetation growth, would have made construction difficult and ongoing maintenance essential. That these stones remain standing today is remarkable, suggesting a careful choice of locations, durable construction methods, and an enduring cultural reverence that ensured their preservation. Yet the very landscape that protected them also conceals much of their context. Forests have shifted, soils have accumulated, and traces of associated settlements may have disappeared beneath centuries of ecological change. Walking among the Calçoene monoliths, the The sense of scale and purpose is humbling. Each upright stone carries the echo of human intent, silently asserting presence in a forest that has long reclaimed much of the surrounding area. Unlike buildings, terraces, or walls, these stones communicate through form, alignment, and placement, leaving the observer to interpret their meaning without the guide of inscriptions or records. They are monuments of human thought as much as of labor, enduring in a landscape that simultaneously conceals and protects them. As sunlight filters through the canopy, illuminating the surfaces of the stones and casting long shadows across the forest floor, the mystery of the Calçoene megaliths becomes almost palpable. They are reminders that human societies, even without written records or modern technology, were capable of remarkable feats of design, labor, and conceptual thinking. And yet, for all we can observe and measure, much remains hidden. What purposes did these stones serve? What knowledge or beliefs guided their construction? And how many secrets, buried beneath the forest and soil, still await discovery? The Calçoene megaliths endure as a quiet testament to human ambition and mystery, a bridge between the physical world and the spiritual, the measurable and the unknowable. They invite reflection, demanding both patience and imagination from those who encounter them. And while modern science can illuminate aspects of their construction and age, the deeper questions about meaning, purpose, and the vision of their creators remain unresolved, leaving us to wonder what other stories these ancient stones could tell if only we knew how to listen. From the verdant forests and towering megaliths of northern Brazil, where human hands shaped stone into enduring monuments, our journey arcs northward once again, this time to the rugged, windswept landscapes of southern Siberia. Nestled in the high valleys and rolling plateaus of the Altai mountains, the Kudyrge stone enclosures rise silently from the steppe, their rough-hewn walls and circular formations hinting at a distant past that is still largely hidden from view. Amid the harsh climate, with biting winds and snow-capped peaks in the distance, these stone constructions seem almost improbable. Human creations etched into a land where survival itself would have demanded extraordinary resilience. At first glance, the Kudyrge enclosures are deceptively simple. Circular or oval in shape, constructed from dry-laid stones of varying sizes, they often encompass diameters of 15 to 20 meters. Some walls rise to nearly a meter in height, while others are now mere remnants of their original form, weathered by centuries of wind, frost, and the slow, creeping advance of vegetation. Yet the deliberate arrangement of stones, the consistency of the shapes, and the locations of the enclosures suggest careful planning and intention. Even in this remote and inhospitable terrain, these structures speak of an ancient understanding of geometry, space, and purpose. Dating the Kudyrge enclosures has proven challenging. Archaeological studies suggest they may have been constructed between 1000 BC and 500 AD, placing them within the broader context of Eurasian steppe cultures that ranged from nomadic herders to early sedentary communities. The scarcity of artifacts complicates the picture. Fragments of pottery, scattered tools, and occasional hearths indicate human activity, but the absence of permanent settlements within or near many enclosures raises questions. Were these spaces temporary gathering sites, ritualistic centers, or defensive perimeters? And if so, what compelled people to organize such labor-intensive constructions in this isolated, unforgiving environment? The placement of the enclosures is itself enigmatic. Many are found on elevated ridges or near natural passes, suggesting strategic selection, yet others appear in seemingly arbitrary locations on open plains. Some researchers propose they functioned as animal corrals or seasonal livestock enclosures, while others argue that the circular form and lack of evidence for long-term habitation hint at ceremonial or astronomical purposes. Could these enclosures have been aligned with solar events, lunar cycles, or star patterns, marking time and seasons for communities attuned to both landscape and sky? And if so, what knowledge guided their construction in a region where survival demanded attention to both? Construction techniques further emphasized the skill involved. Stones were transported, shaped, and arranged without mortar, relying on balance, friction, and careful placement to maintain stability. In some enclosures, stones of larger size appear to have been deliberately positioned at key points, perhaps as markers or symbolic elements. The effort required to quarry, transport, and erect these stones in high-altitude terrain, often over uneven ground, points to organized labor and sustained human effort. Were these enclosures communal projects, the product of collective decision-making and shared purpose? Or were they commissioned by emerging social hierarchies, designed to assert control, ritual power, or territorial claims? Oral traditions from indigenous Altai communities provide intriguing, if fragmentary, hints. Stories speak of sacred spaces in the mountains, of gatherings around stone circles where ancestral rites were performed and knowledge of the natural world was preserved. Could the Kudyrge enclosures represent the physical embodiment of such spiritual and cultural practice, spaces where humans sought alignment with the rhythms of nature, the movement of stars, or the will of unseen forces? And if so, how much of this understanding has been lost, leaving only stone forms as silent witnesses to once living traditions? The environment itself adds both context and challenge to interpretation. The Altai Mountains, with their sudden shifts in weather, seasonal snowfall, and steep terrain, demand ingenuity and adaptation from any who inhabit them. The enclosure's survival is remarkable, given the combination of natural forces that could have easily erased them over centuries. Their continued presence suggests a careful choice of materials, placement, and construction methods that allowed them to withstand the extremes of time and climate, a silent testament to human knowledge applied in harmony with the environment. Walking among the stones today, one is struck by both their simplicity and their resonance. There are no inscriptions, no immediate markers of identity or hierarchy, yet the sense of human intention is undeniable. Each circle, each carefully placed stone, offers a connection across millennia, a bridge between the modern observer and the communities who conceived, quarried, and assembled them. In the quiet wind and the stillness of the high-altitude steppe, it is possible to sense the echoes of ceremony, labor, and social cohesion, though their exact nature remains obscured. The Kudyrge stone enclosures continue to challenge our understanding of prehistoric Eurasian cultures. They are at once functional and symbolic, tangible and mysterious, raising questions about the interplay between human activity, ritual, and the natural world. Why were these enclosures abandoned? What exact functions did they serve, and what knowledge guided their design? Could there be connections to broader networks of steppe communities, linking ritual, trade, and observation across vast distances? And most compellingly, what secrets remain buried beneath the stones, waiting silently for discovery? As sunlight drifts across the ridges and valleys of the Altai Mountains, casting long shadows through the enclosures, the sense of mystery endures. The Kudyrge structures stand as monuments to human resilience, ingenuity, and the desire to impose order on the natural world. Yet for all their presence and precision, they remain incomplete puzzles, fragments of a story that challenges our assumptions, inviting us to ponder the intentions, knowledge, and lives of those who built them. What other meanings lie hidden in their circular forms, and what might future exploration reveal about this enigmatic chapter of human history? From the high ridges of Siberia, where the Kudyrge stone enclosures rise in quiet isolation, we now journey southwest across continents and climates to the vast otherworldly expanse of the Sahara Desert. In the remote reaches of southeastern Algeria, amidst jagged sandstone plateaus and deep canyons, lie the Tassili stone platforms, enigmatic constructions etched into one of the most inhospitable landscapes on Earth. At first, they appear as subtle terraces and flat expanses of rock, but closer inspection reveals intentional shaping, alignment, and organization that hint at the deliberate hands of ancient builders, leaving a silent testament to ingenuity and purpose in a land of extremes. The Tassili stone platforms are scattered across the plateau in clusters, forming terraces, leveled surfaces, and low embankments. Some stretch for tens of meters, carefully carved from the sandstone bedrock, while others appear as isolated platforms, seemingly intended to dominate the landscape or demarcate a particular space. The surfaces are remarkably flat, suggesting a precision of labor that seems extraordinary given the tools likely available at the time. Walking across these platforms today, one can almost feel the presence of those who labored here, imagining the sweat, skill, and coordination necessary to transform raw rock into purposeful, enduring forms. Dating the platforms is challenging, though researchers place their construction broadly between 4000 and 1000 BC. This period coincides with significant climatic and cultural shifts in the Sahara. Once a greener, wetter region, the area could sustain small communities, herders, and perhaps early agricultural practices. Yet the platforms themselves are not directly associated with permanent settlements, raising immediate questions. Were they ceremonial spaces, temporary gathering points, or markers of territorial significance? And if so, what motivated their construction in an environment that demanded adaptability and resilience just to survive? The scale and precision of the platforms are striking. Some terraces are level over long distances, requiring careful planning to ensure stability on uneven or sloped terrain. Others are aligned in ways that suggest consideration of solar angles, wind patterns, or water flow, hinting at knowledge of both the natural world and architectural principles. Could these alignments have been intended for ritual observances, astronomical calculations, or seasonal markers, guiding the communities who visited them through cycles of time? Or were the platforms primarily social spaces, where early Saharan groups convened to organize, exchange, or celebrate? The methods of construction further deepen the mystery. Carving sandstone with rudimentary stone tools would have required significant effort, skill, and collective labor. The sheer energy invested in creating level surfaces, straight edges, and interconnected terraces suggests not only practical know-how, but also a cultural or symbolic impetus strong enough to mobilize communities over generations. How did these people coordinate their work, transport tools, and sustain labor in a landscape defined by scarcity, heat, and isolation? And what knowledge, now lost to us, enabled them to design structures that still endure today, despite millennia of erosion and environmental change? Placement of the platforms within the Tassili landscape raises additional questions. Many are situated on elevated points, overlooking valleys, dry riverbeds, and surrounding rock formations. Such positioning could indicate defensive considerations, spiritual significance, or a desire to create vantage points across the terrain. In other cases, the platforms appear in sequences or clusters that may form patterns only fully visible from above or at specific vantage points, suggesting a conceptual design beyond immediate practicality. Could these layouts encode knowledge of the terrain, astronomy, or even early mapping systems? And if so, what other insights might remain hidden beneath the desert sands and wind-sculpted rock? Local oral traditions and archaeological interpretations hint at ritual significance. The broader Tassili region is renowned for its prehistoric rock art, depicting humans, animals, and abstract symbols in vibrant scenes spanning thousands of years. Could the platforms have served as stages or foundations for ceremonies, observances, or social gatherings associated with these artworks? Were they designed to elevate participants above the ground, literally and metaphorically, in order to engage with sacred space, celestial cycles, or communal rituals? While definitive evidence is scarce, the possibility of a symbolic or spiritual dimension cannot be dismissed. Environmental factors also play a role in the enigma. The Sahara, now an arid expanse, was once a savanna teeming with rivers, lakes, and wildlife. The platforms endure in a climate that alternates between scorching heat, strong winds, and sudden rains, a testament to both the builder's skill and the resilience of the stone. Their preservation allows modern observers to walk across the same surfaces crafted thousands of years ago, bridging the gap between past and present, yet their purpose remains largely speculative. As one moves across the Tassili stone platforms today, the sense of human ingenuity is striking. Each terrace, each leveled surface embodies careful thought, communal effort, and perhaps even ritualistic intention. They challenge assumptions about prehistoric life in the Sahara, revealing sophisticated interaction with the environment, architectural awareness, and symbolic expression. Yet, for all their clarity of form, the deeper questions linger. Why were they built? What stories, beliefs, or functions did they embody? And how much of this knowledge has been lost to the shifting sands of time? In the shifting light of the desert, the platforms exude a quiet majesty. Shadows stretch across carved terraces, highlighting their geometric precision, while the surrounding canyons and rock formations frame each construction as if part of a larger, intentional landscape. The Tassili stone platforms endure as monuments to human skill, vision, and adaptability, yet their ultimate meaning remains elusive. They remind us that even in the harshest environments, our ancestors sought to leave their mark, to organize, to interpret, and perhaps to communicate something beyond the immediate necessities of survival. And so, standing amidst these ancient terraces, one is compelled to ask, what truths remain buried beneath the desert sands, just beyond our sight? What knowledge, rituals, or cultural practices inspired the construction of these stone platforms, and how might future exploration illuminate their purpose? The Tassili stone platforms remain as silent, enduring witnesses to human ingenuity, a mystery inviting us to reflect, to wonder, and to continue the search for understanding. From the windswept plateaus of the Sahara, where the Tassili stone platforms whisper of human ingenuity and ritual, our journey returns once more to the dense, fertile expanse of the Amazon basin. Here, amid the labyrinth of rivers, floodplains, and tropical forests, lie the Monte Castello shellstone mounds, enigmatic formations that rise subtly from the forest floor, blending human intention with the natural landscape. At first, they may appear as mere humps of earth, but a closer view reveals a deliberate layering of soil, stone, and shells, revealing a prehistoric record of human activity, adaptation, and perhaps ritual expression spanning thousands of years. The Monte Castello site is remarkable for its scale and complexity. The mounds, some rising several meters high and stretching across hundreds of meters, are composed of alternating layers of sediment, shells from freshwater mollusks, and stones. The careful stratigraphy suggests planning, effort, and knowledge of local materials, with shells possibly serving both practical and symbolic purposes. Walking among the mounds, one is struck by their permanence. Despite centuries of flooding, forest growth, and erosion, the layered structures endure, silently recording the labor and lives of the communities who built them. Radiocarbon dating indicates that the mounds were first constructed around 500 BC during the late pre-Columbian period, although some layers suggest even earlier activity. The site was likely occupied seasonally or permanently by pre-Arawak cultures, whose subsistence strategies relied on fishing, foraging, and small-scale horticulture. Yet, unlike simple midden heaps or waste deposits, the Monte Castello mounds are highly organized, suggesting purposes that go beyond mere disposal. Were they ceremonial platforms, territorial markers, or symbols of social status? Could they have been constructed to honor ancestors, track the cycles of rivers and seasons, or serve as communal gathering points? The answers remain elusive. The integration of shells into the mounds adds a particularly intriguing element. Freshwater mollusks were abundant in the rivers of the Amazon basin and provided a vital source of nutrition. Yet in the Monte Castello mounds, shells are not randomly scattered. They appear in deliberate layers, sometimes forming distinct strata or incorporated with stones to stabilize the structures. Could this practice have held symbolic meaning, a connection between life, sustenance, and ritual? Or was it primarily functional, a method to strengthen the mounds against seasonal flooding and erosion? The dual possibility, practical and ceremonial, adds depth to the mystery. The sheer scale of the mounds suggests coordinated labor and communal effort. Constructing them would have required moving massive quantities of earth, stones, and shells, shaping them with care to form durable, structured layers. What motivated these prehistoric communities to undertake such monumental tasks in an environment both fertile and unpredictable? Was it a reflection of social cohesion, spiritual necessity, or long-term planning that transcended immediate survival needs? And how much of their knowledge of local ecology, hydrology, and materials has been lost to time, leaving only these enduring traces? Placement within the landscape is equally fascinating. Many mounds are positioned near river terraces, elevated above floodplains, yet close enough to benefit from aquatic resources. This suggests a sophisticated understanding of environmental dynamics, protecting structures from seasonal inundation while maintaining access to water, fish, and fertile soils. Could the location of each mound also encode additional layers of meaning? Spatial organization reflecting social hierarchies, cosmological principles, or ceremonial paths? The possibility of such intentionality deepens the intrigue, hinting at knowledge systems that remain largely inaccessible to modern researchers. Excavations have revealed artifacts within and around the mounds, pottery fragments, stone tools, and remnants of food preparation, yet much remains mysterious. The absence of permanent dwellings in immediate proximity suggests that some mounds may have been constructed for ritual or communal purposes rather than habitation. Could the mounds have been stages for ceremonial gatherings, observances of celestial events, or offerings to ancestors and spirits? And if so, what rituals were performed, and how were they connected to the cycles of life, water, and forest that shaped daily existence? Walking among the mounds today, it is easy to feel a sense of temporal displacement. The forest reclaims much of the landscape, vines and roots entwining stones, watercourses shifting slowly through the layers of sediment. Yet beneath this living canopy lies a meticulous record of human activity, an archive written in shells, stone, and earth. The mounds endure as a testament to labor, intention, and cultural expression, yet their meaning remains largely opaque, inviting curiosity and contemplation. The Monte Castello site reminds us that prehistoric societies were far more sophisticated and adaptable than often assumed. They manipulated materials, coordinated labor, and shaped the environment in ways that were both practical and symbolic. And yet, much of their knowledge, their rituals, and their worldview remain invisible to us, encoded only in the patterns and structures they left behind. What stories of daily life, spiritual practice, or social organization are embedded in these layered mounds? How many layers remain undiscovered, holding secrets of climate adaptation, ritual, or cultural continuity lost to history? As sunlight filters through the dense Amazon canopy, illuminating layers of stone and shell, the mounds exude a quiet majesty. They are monuments of endurance, bridging human history and the living landscape. And while archaeologists continue to uncover and analyze their layers, Monte Castello remains a puzzle, a silent witness to communities whose ingenuity, labor, and imagination shaped the land long before written history. The site invites reflection, urging us to consider what else remains hidden beneath the forest floor and how much more of the Amazon's prehistoric past is waiting to be rediscovered. In the stillness of the rainforest, among these layered mounds, one is left with a lingering question. What deeper knowledge did these early builders possess, and what insights might yet emerge from the shells, stones, and earth they left behind? Monte Castello endures as both a record and a mystery, a reminder that human creativity and the impulse to shape the world are timeless, and that the Amazon still holds stories that remain untold. From the layered mounds of Monte Castello in the Amazon, where human hands shaped earth and shell into enduring monuments, our journey now stretches across the Pacific to the lush highlands of Papua New Guinea. Here, amid mist-shrouded valleys, winding rivers, and fertile alluvial plains, lie the Cook Swamp stone features, ancient constructions whose subtle forms blend seamlessly with the surrounding landscape, yet hint at a sophisticated understanding of land, water, and human organization. At first glance, they appear as slight ridges, stone-lined channels, and irregular mounds, easily overlooked in the verdant wetland. But closer observation reveals a network of features deliberately arranged, testifying to centuries of careful planning and human ingenuity. The Cook Swamp site is remarkable for its age and scale. Archaeological studies suggest that some features date back as far as 7,000 BC, making them among the oldest known examples of landscape modification in Oceania. The stone arrangements, often combined with raised earth and swamp drainage channels, appear designed to control water flow, manage soils, and perhaps create conditions suitable for early cultivation. In a region defined by heavy seasonal rains and periodic flooding, such engineering would have been essential for sustaining food production. And yet, the sophistication of these constructions hints at more than purely practical intent. Walking among the stone features today, one is struck by the subtlety and precision of their design. Some stones are aligned along narrow ridges or embedded in shallow channels, creating a controlled pattern that seems both deliberate and harmonious with the surrounding topography. Could these alignments have served practical agricultural purposes alone, or did they also carry social, ceremonial, or symbolic meaning? The boundaries between utilitarian construction and cultural expression blur, inviting speculation on the worldview of the communities who undertook this labor. The scale of the site is also revealing. Cook Swamp covers an extensive area, with dozens of channels, mounds, and stone arrangements interacting across the wetland. Constructing such a network would have required coordinated labor, sustained knowledge of hydrology, and careful observation of seasonal cycles. How did early communities in this remote highland region organize such monumental effort? What knowledge of soil, water, and seasonal variation guided the placement of each stone and mound? And to what extent did these features represent the intersection of survival, ingenuity, and culture in a challenging environment? The stone features' function is still the subject of study and debate. Many researchers view them primarily as evidence of early agricultural innovation, particularly in the cultivation of taro, bananas, and other staples. The raised platforms and channels may have prevented crops from being submerged during floods, creating stable, fertile planting grounds. Yet the deliberate regularity of some alignments and the concentration of features in particular zones suggest additional purposes, perhaps communal or ceremonial gatherings, territorial demarcations, or even the encoding of ancestral knowledge in the landscape itself. Could the patterns we see today reflect ritual practice as much as practical engineering, a blending of sacred and secular needs? The construction techniques speak to the ingenuity and resilience of these early communities. Stones were gathered, shaped, and positioned without mortar, embedded in wet, often unstable soils. channels and ridges required careful planning to ensure water would flow as intended, without eroding or collapsing the structures. The labor investment alone suggests a societal organization capable of mobilizing groups for prolonged projects, with knowledge passed across generations. And yet, no written records or definitive explanations survive, leaving the site as a tantalizing puzzle. How did these people conceptualize landscape management on such a scale, and what cultural frameworks guided their work? The environment itself both preserves and obscures the mysteries of Cook Swamp. Dense vegetation, shifting sediments, and seasonal flooding continuously reshape the land, making identification of structures challenging without modern archaeological methods. Yet these same forces have helped protect the site from total destruction, preserving layers of soil, stone, and plant remains that reveal both practical and ceremonial dimensions. What else lies hidden beneath the swamp's surface, waiting to illuminate the lives, beliefs, and knowledge of the people who shaped it? Archaeologists have uncovered tools, pottery shards, and remnants of food processing, suggesting that the stone features were integrated into daily life. But much of their meaning remains opaque. Were the stones primarily functional, or did they also serve as markers of social hierarchy, ritual spaces, or mnemonic devices encoding environmental or ancestral knowledge? The possibility that the stone features carried multiple overlapping purposes, practical, spiritual, and social, is compelling, though difficult to confirm. Standing on the edges of the swamp, among the ridges and channels, one can almost sense the rhythm of early life, the careful tending of crops, the monitoring of water levels, and the communal coordination necessary to sustain a settlement in a challenging environment. The stone features endure as silent witnesses, bridging millennia, yet their full story remains untold. They are reminders that prehistoric societies were capable of far-reaching environmental manipulation, integrating observation, labor, and culture in ways that continue to challenge modern understanding. And so, as sunlight filters through the highland mist and glimmers across water-filled channels, the Cook Swamp stone features continue to provoke reflection and curiosity. What knowledge guided the creation of these enduring constructions? What rituals, agricultural practices, or social hierarchies have been lost to time? And what other secrets remain buried beneath the swamp's dense soil, waiting to reveal more about one of humanity's earliest sophisticated interactions with the landscape? Cook Swamp stands as a monument to ingenuity, adaptation, and mystery, a chapter in human history that invites us to ponder both what we know and what remains hidden. And from the highlands of Papua New Guinea, where the Cook Swamp stone features reveal humanity's earliest attempts to shape the landscape for sustenance and ceremony, we now cross the Indian Ocean to the rolling savannas and river valleys of southern Africa. Here, near the town of Kalomo in Zambia, lie the enigmatic Kalomo stone platforms, ancient constructions of stone, earth, and subtle terraces that rise quietly from the landscape, blending human intention with the natural contours of the land. At first glance, the platforms appear as gentle, linear elevations or clusters of stones scattered across the savanna, easily overlooked, yet their organization and scale hint at a sophisticated understanding of terrain, labor, and purpose. The Kalomo platforms are remarkable for their subtlety and precision. Unlike massive pyramids or towering walls, they are low-lying and understated, often less than a meter in height, yet their arrangement across the landscape suggests careful planning. Some platforms form elongated terraces, others cluster in circular or rectangular groupings, while a few appear aligned with natural features such as river bends or ridges. Walking across these formations, one senses both the human labor required to create them and the quiet persistence of time that has allowed them to endure, even as the African savanna shifts around them. Archaeological studies place the construction of these platforms roughly between 300 BC and 1000 AD, situating them in a period of emerging social complexity in southern Africa. The builders were likely part of early farming communities, cultivating sorghum, millet, and other staples while navigating seasonal rainfall and the challenges of semi-arid land. Yet unlike typical agricultural terraces, the Kalomo platforms display precision and alignment that suggest purposes beyond simple cultivation. Were they ceremonial spaces, markers of ancestral memory, or even tools of social organization, reflecting the hierarchy, cooperation, or territorial claims of the communities that created them? The scale and labor implied by these platforms are striking. Moving stone, leveling earth, and constructing terraces across undulating savanna terrain would have required both collective coordination and sustained knowledge of local soils, drainage, and seasonal cycles. How did these communities organize such work without written records or advanced machinery? Could the placement of each platform reflect observations of the sun, rainfall patterns, or river behavior, blending practical engineering with symbolic or ritual significance? And if so, what cultural frameworks guided the decision-making of these prehistoric builders? Patterns in the Kalomo landscape invite further speculation. Some platforms appear in linear sequences, forming pathways or alignments that may have facilitated movement, demarcated sacred or communal spaces, or structured ritual gatherings. Others form clusters that suggest enclosures, perhaps for livestock or for gatherings of people. Could these arrangements represent early forms of spatial planning, integrating social, economic, and ceremonial functions? Or might they encode knowledge of the environment, creating a landscape that was both functional and symbolic, a physical expression of human interaction with the land? The methods of construction provide additional insight into the ingenuity of these early societies. Stones were quarried locally, shaped and positioned carefully, often embedded in raised earth to form stable platforms resistant to erosion. Such efforts imply not only skill, but also long-term planning and intergenerational knowledge transfer. Communities must have coordinated labor, monitored seasonal changes, and maintained structures over decades, if not centuries. What motivated this sustained effort? Practical agricultural necessity, ritual devotion, social cohesion, or some combination of all three? And what knowledge, now lost, allowed these early builders to manipulate the landscape so precisely and durably? The surrounding environment offers both clues and challenges. The Kalomo region features rivers, floodplains, and mixed woodland, providing resources for farming and settlement, but also demanding adaptability. Seasonal rains could wash away poorly designed structures, while dry periods required careful management of soil and water. The platform's survival suggests an understanding of these dynamics and perhaps a cultural significance that ensured their preservation. Did the placement of these structures relate to water sources, trade routes, or ritual landscapes? And how much of the original network has been lost to centuries of erosion, farming, or human settlement? Archaeologists have uncovered pottery shards, stone tools, and remnants of fire pits around the platforms, indicating human activity. Yet the broader purpose remains elusive. Were the platforms primarily functional, ceremonial, or symbolic, or some combination thereof? Could they have served as elevated spaces for rituals, stages for social gatherings, or platforms for observing environmental changes? And how did these structures reflect the social organization, spiritual beliefs, and daily lives of the communities who built them? Walking across the Kalomo platforms today, one feels a profound connection to the past. The stones and terraces are silent witnesses to human creativity, labor, and adaptation in a challenging landscape. They challenge assumptions about prehistoric African societies, revealing sophisticated knowledge of terrain, agriculture, and community planning long before written history. And yet, for all their precision, their ultimate meaning remains beyond our grasp, inviting both contemplation and curiosity. As sunlight warms the undulating plains, casting long shadows across the stone platforms, the mystery endures. The Kalomo structures stand as a testament to ingenuity, perseverance, and perhaps ritual devotion, an intricate dialogue between humans and their environment. And while modern archaeology continues to uncover fragments of their story, much remains hidden, waiting beneath layers of earth and memory. What knowledge, beliefs, or practices motivated these early communities? And what other secrets of the Kalomo landscape might remain undiscovered, silently preserved by time and terrain? The Kalomo stone platforms endure as both evidence and enigma, a subtle, enduring reminder that human societies, across continents and millennia, have shaped the world in ways that challenge our understanding. They invite reflection, urging us to wonder not only about the lives of those who built them, but also about the vast and largely unexplored mysteries that the Earth still holds. From the warm savannas of southern Africa, where the Kalomo stone platforms rise quietly as markers of human ingenuity and adaptation, our journey now carries us across oceans and centuries to the rolling hills and mist-laden valleys of central Scotland. Here, near the town of Hohle, lies the Cochno stone, a vast expanse of rock etched with hundreds of enigmatic cup and ring marks, spirals, and geometric patterns, a prehistoric canvas that has fascinated archaeologists, historians, and curious minds alike for over a century. Spread across some 90 square meters, this stone is not only one of the largest and most intricate examples of rock art in the British Isles, but also a silent witness to the symbolic and ritualistic lives of its creators. At first glance, the carvings appear as simple depressions in the stone, each cup-shaped mark surrounded by concentric rings, sometimes connected by channels or grooves. Yet as one's gaze lingers, the scale, complexity, and rhythm of the patterns become apparent. Hundreds of individual motifs overlap and interweave, forming a labyrinth of lines and forms that resist immediate comprehension. The stone's surface is worn and weathered, softened by millennia of Scottish rains, yet the designs remain strikingly clear, as if defying time itself. Walking across the field where it lies, one cannot help but sense the deliberate care and intent behind each mark, a record of human thought frozen in stone. Dating the Cochno stone is challenging, but researchers suggest the carvings were likely created between 3000 and 1500 BC, placing them in the Neolithic to early Bronze Age. The precise function of the carvings remains a subject of debate, as no written record survived to explain them. Were they part of a ritual landscape, connected to ancestor worship, astronomical observation, or territorial marking? Or perhaps they were symbolic representations of cosmology, maps, or journeys, abstract forms meant to encode knowledge for those initiated into their meaning? The stone offers tantalizing clues but no definitive answers. The intricacy of the carvings is striking. Some cup and ring motifs are simple, with a single depression encircled by one or two rings. Others are complex, featuring multiple rings, channels, and interconnected shapes. Could these variations reflect hierarchy, narrative sequences, or the passage of time? Might the channels connecting certain cups have guided water, served as alignments with celestial events, or simply linked symbolic concepts? Scholars have proposed that the carvings encode information about seasons, star patterns, or ritual cycles, but the absence of corroborating evidence leaves these ideas in the realm of speculation. The stone's placement within the landscape is equally intriguing. The Cochno stone rests atop a gentle rise, overlooking fertile valleys and watercourses, suggesting that its creators selected the site deliberately. Was the elevated position meant to assert presence, to mark sacred space, or to align with distant landscape features? Could the stone have functioned as a communal gathering point, where the local population performed rituals, ceremonies, or social events, using the carved motifs as focal points for symbolic or spiritual engagement? And if so, what practices or beliefs guided the selection of patterns, their density, and their orientation? Over the years, the Cochno stone has faced threats from human activity, weathering, and vegetation growth. Parts of it were buried in the 1960s to protect it from vandalism, highlighting the challenge of preserving such fragile prehistoric heritage. Yet even in its concealed state, detailed surveys and photographs have revealed the extraordinary scale of its artistry. How did the people of the Neolithic and Bronze Age acquire the skill, vision, and patience to create such a vast, coherent composition on uneven rock surfaces? What social or spiritual imperatives inspired this labor-intensive work, carried out without metal tools or formalized writing systems? Theories about the carving's meaning range from the practical to the mystical. Some researchers suggest the patterns represent maps of terrain or watercourses, a visual guide for communities navigating the surrounding landscape. Others propose astronomical interpretations, where cup and ring motifs mark solstices, lunar cycles, or star alignments, embedding timekeeping into the rock itself. More speculative ideas consider spiritual or ritualistic dimensions. The carvings may have functioned as portals to the spiritual world, as mnemonic devices for oral traditions, or as representations of cosmology encoded in symbolic language. And yet, no single explanation accounts fully for the diversity and complexity of the motifs, leaving the Cochno stone a tantalizing mystery. Standing before the stone, one feels the weight of human imagination across millennia. Each depression, ring, and groove represents the mind of an individual or community, committed to leaving a mark that would outlast generations. The Cochno stone challenges modern observers to think beyond utilitarian perspectives, to consider how abstract, symbolic, and ritual expression shaped prehistoric societies. And yet, the ultimate meaning of the carvings remains elusive, a dialogue with the past that continues to provoke wonder and inquiry. As mist drifts across the Scottish hills and sunlight catches the carved grooves, the Cochno stone endures as a monument to both creativity and enigma. It invites reflection on the lives, knowledge, and beliefs of those who shaped it, while reminding us that human history is often a puzzle, partially revealed and partially hidden. What secrets, patterns, or insights remain locked within the grooves of the stone? And how many aspects of prehistoric thought, cosmology, or ritual practice remain beyond our grasp, waiting to be rediscovered? The Cochno stone stands as a testament to humanity's enduring impulse to communicate, symbolize, and mark the world, not for immediate practical necessity, but for ideas, memory, and meaning. In its silent presence, it continues to ask questions, challenge assumptions, and inspire curiosity, bridging the distant past with the present. It is both a record and a mystery, a monumental puzzle carved in stone that invites us to wonder, to explore, and to imagine the intentions of those who came before. From the misty hills of Scotland, where the Cochno stone whispers the silent stories of Neolithic hands etched in rock, our journey now moves to the tropical landscapes of Southeast Asia. In the rolling plains near the modern village of Ban Chiang, Thailand, stretches an expanse of earth marked by enigmatic megalithic alignments, rows of stone markers, standing or partially buried, forming linear sequences that cut across the landscape with deliberate precision. At first glance, these stones may appear as scattered remnants of a forgotten past, yet closer inspection reveals intentional patterns, as if the land itself has been organized according to human vision and purpose. The Ban Chiang site is remarkable not only for its age, but for its scale. Archaeological evidence suggests that some alignments date back as far as 1500 BC, placing them firmly within the Late Bronze Age. The stones, varying in height and composition, are arranged in straight lines, clusters, and geometric formations that extend across open fields and gentle rises. Walking among them today, one senses both the effort required to transport and position these heavy markers and the subtle intelligence that guided their placement, hinting at knowledge of distance, orientation, and spatial planning long before modern surveying tools. Archaeologists have long debated the function of these alignments. Were they ceremonial pathways, guiding ritual processions or seasonal observances? Could they have served as territorial markers, delineating clan boundaries or communal lands? Or might they represent astronomical or calendrical systems, mapping solstices, equinoxes, or lunar cycles with precision only visible from certain vantage points or heights? The stone's arrangement suggests intent, yet their purpose remains elusive, a bridge between practical human activity and abstract symbolic thought. The construction of these alignments would have demanded coordinated effort, knowledge of local materials, and careful observation of the surrounding terrain. Stones were quarried locally or transported short distances, shaped and placed in carefully measured intervals. Some alignments run for hundreds of meters, indicating both planning and sustained labor. What social structures or cultural imperatives enabled such projects? Were they collective endeavors, requiring the collaboration of entire communities, or the vision of specialized groups overseeing ceremonial or symbolic construction? Patterns within the Bazhyn alignments are subtle but deliberate. Certain lines converge on elevated points, natural features, or watercourses, suggesting a relationship between the stones and the broader landscape. Others form clusters that might mark sacred spaces or ritual centers. Could these patterns encode knowledge of the land, the stars, or seasonal cycles? And, if so, what kind of understanding guided their creation? One rooted in observation, spiritual insight, or a combination of both? The alignments challenge us to consider prehistoric people as sophisticated planners, deeply attuned to their environment and capable of abstract representation. Bazhyn is also renowned for its rich archaeological context. Excavations have revealed early bronze tools, pottery, and burial sites, suggesting that these megaliths were part of a vibrant, complex society. Yet the stones themselves remain enigmatic, standing apart from domestic spaces and graves, hinting at purposes that may have transcended everyday life. Could the alignments have been ceremonial thoroughfares connecting sacred or communal sites, or open-air observatories used to mark celestial events critical for agriculture and ritual? And if so, what stories, beliefs, or traditions have been lost, leaving only stone as a silent testimony? The tropical environment both preserves and conceals the mysteries of Bazhyn. Seasonal rains and dense vegetation can obscure alignments, yet they have also protected them from total destruction. Erosion, human settlement, and agricultural activity over centuries have altered the landscape, making it challenging to reconstruct the original design fully. How much of the original network remains hidden beneath soil and foliage, waiting to reveal patterns that might clarify the stone's purpose? Could there be connections to distant settlements or other megalithic traditions across Southeast Asia, hinting at a shared knowledge or cultural exchange long before recorded history? Standing amidst the rows and clusters of Bazhyn today, one feels a connection across time. The stones, weathered and silent, speak to human intention, coordination, and creativity. They embody knowledge of the land, an understanding of material and space, and possibly spiritual or symbolic frameworks that guided daily life. And yet, for all their clarity and precision, their ultimate meaning remains unresolved, a testament to the depth and complexity of prehistoric human thought. The Bazhyn megalithic alignments remind us that human societies have always sought to shape their environment, to impose order, convey meaning, and connect with forces both visible and unseen. They are enduring monuments to ingenuity, curiosity, and symbolic expression, yet they remain an open puzzle, an invitation to reflect, to study, and to wonder. What knowledge guided the placement of these stones, and what rituals or observances took place along their lines. How did prehistoric communities perceive and interact with these alignments, and what other hidden patterns or structures lie buried beneath the soil? As the sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the stones and highlighting their careful spacing, Chiang continues to provoke questions as it has for centuries. Each alignment, each marker, is a silent witness to human imagination, precision, and perhaps devotion, a fragment of a story that stretches across millennia. They endure as both evidence and enigma, reminding us that much of human history is written not in books, but in the landscapes we leave behind. In the quiet of the Thai plains, amid the megaliths of Chiang, one is compelled to ask, how much more of our prehistoric past remains hidden, waiting for discovery? What knowledge, ritual, or observation inspired these arrangements? And what lessons might they hold for those who seek to understand the intersection of human ingenuity, environment, and the eternal impulse to leave a mark upon the world? The stones stand as a testament to the mystery of our ancestors, a story in stone still unfolding, quietly inviting the imagination to fill in the gaps. From the sun-drenched plains of Chiang, where rows of megaliths trace human intention across the landscape, our journey now sweeps northward into the temperate forests and limestone cliffs of southwestern Germany. Nestled within the Hohle River Valley of the Swabian Jura, the Hohle Fels region is renowned for its deep caves, remarkable Ice Age artifacts, and, perhaps less widely known, a series of subtle stone alignments that emerge quietly from the forest floor. At first glance, these stones may seem unremarkable, small, scattered boulders and linear arrangements that barely rise above the soil, but closer inspection reveals intentional positioning, as if prehistoric hands were shaping space itself, embedding knowledge, ritual, or memory into the very earth. The Hohle Fels stone alignments occupy a landscape that has witnessed human activity for tens of thousands of years. The caves themselves, most famously Hohle Fels Cave, have yielded some of the earliest known examples of figurative art and musical instruments, testifying to the remarkable sophistication of Upper Paleolithic cultures. Within this broader context, the alignments offer a more terrestrial expression of human cognition, less about art and more about order, orientation, and perhaps connection. The stones are arranged in rows, arcs, and clusters, sometimes aligned along subtle ridge lines or valleys. Could these patterns mark ceremonial pathways, gathering spaces, or observation points within the natural landscape? Or were they tools of orientation, guiding movement across the terrain in ways now lost to memory? Dating the Hohle Fels stone features is challenging. While the cave artifacts indicate occupation dating back as far as 40,000 BC, the stone alignments themselves likely date to a later period, perhaps the late Upper Paleolithic or early Mesolithic. The placement of stones, often in repetitive sequences or geometrically suggestive patterns, implies deliberate planning. Were these placements tied to astronomical observation, marking the rising and setting of the sun or moon at key points in the seasonal calendar? Or were they ritual expressions, marking sacred space in an environment shaped by glaciers, rivers, and forest? The answers remain tantalizingly out of reach, a reminder of the limits of material evidence in conveying prehistoric thought. The landscape itself adds to the mystery. The alignments are often situated near elevated terraces overlooking rivers or valleys, yet integrated seamlessly into the natural topography. This suggests an intimate understanding of terrain, one that combines utility, symbolism, and perhaps a spiritual or cosmological framework. Could the selection of particular ridges and open spaces have been guided by visual sightlines, water sources, or acoustic properties? And if these arrangements held ritual or symbolic significance, how might their meaning have been communicated and preserved in a pre-literate society? The labor involved in creating these alignments would have been significant. Stones were selected, shaped, and positioned without metal tools, relying on coordinated effort and intimate knowledge of weight, leverage, and stability. Their careful placement indicates that these communities were capable of long-term planning and intergenerational knowledge transfer. Yet unlike monumental constructions elsewhere, such as megalithic complexes in Southeast Asia or Africa, the Hohle Fels arrangements are subtle, intimate, and difficult to perceive without careful study. Was this subtlety intentional, a coded landscape visible only to those initiated into its meaning? Or was it simply an aesthetic or practical choice, balancing function and form in ways we may never fully understand? The alignment's relationship to nearby cave art is particularly intriguing. The caves of Hohle Fels contain carved figurines, flutes, and engraved imagery depicting animals and abstract symbols. Could the outdoor alignments have extended these symbolic networks into the surrounding environment, creating a continuum between art, ritual, and landscape? Perhaps the stones were meant to frame certain vistas, mark communal spaces, or even encode movement patterns associated with ritual practice. The interplay between the subterranean caves and the open-air alignments hints at a worldview in which indoor and outdoor, spiritual and material, practical and symbolic, were seamlessly integrated. The stones also provoke questions about social organization. Coordinating the placement of multiple stones across uneven terrain would have required collaboration, shared knowledge, and perhaps leadership or ritual authority. Were these alignments the work of entire communities, serving as gathering points, ceremonial pathways, or territorial markers? Or were they created by specialized groups, possessing the knowledge to encode meaning into the landscape in ways the broader population understood intuitively? Standing among the Hohle Fels stone alignments today, one senses the careful hand of our distant ancestors. The stones are quiet witnesses to human ingenuity, observation, and imagination. Yet their purpose remains enigmatic, a challenge to modern interpretation. How much of their meaning was practical, and how much symbolic or ritualistic? What knowledge, belief systems, or environmental awareness guided their placement? And what other alignments, long since eroded or concealed beneath vegetation, might still await discovery, potentially revealing broader networks of prehistoric activity? As sunlight filters through the temperate forests and shadows stretch across the low ridges and boulders, the Hohle Fels stone alignments stand as a bridge across time. They are enduring testaments to the curiosity, skill, and vision of people who sought to impose order, communicate meaning, or mark their presence in the world tens of thousands of years ago. And yet, for all their endurance, they remain a riddle, an invitation to explore, reflect, and wonder. What insights about early European societies, their beliefs, and their interactions with the land remain hidden in these stones? How many stories of ritual, navigation, or communal memory lie encoded in their quiet, deliberate placement? The Hohle Fels stone alignments endure as monuments to human thought, ingenuity, and mystery, a subtle, silent language carved into the landscape. They remind us that even in the most understated of prehistoric constructions, profound knowledge and intention can survive millennia, quietly challenging us to look closer, to question, and to imagine the minds that shaped them. From the forested hills and limestone cliffs of Hohle Fels, where subtle stone alignments whisper the intentions of prehistoric Europeans, our journey now spans continents and oceans to the vast high plains of Wyoming, USA. Here, atop the windswept ridges of the Bighorn Mountains, lies the enigmatic Bighorn medicine wheel, an extraordinary arrangement of stones radiating from a central cairn, its substructures forming a complex pattern that has puzzled explorers, archaeologists, and indigenous communities alike for generations. The wheel rests in stark contrast to its surroundings. a flat summit surrounded by rolling ridges, panoramic skies, and the distant outlines of mountains, lending it an almost otherworldly presence amid the raw, untamed landscape. The medicine wheel is composed of a central stone cairn, surrounded by a circle of stones nearly 80 feet in diameter, with radiating spokes extending outward like the rays of the sun. Beyond the visible wheel, less apparent substructures, smaller cairns, stone lines, and alignments, form a network of features whose purpose is difficult to decipher. From above, the patterns are precise, geometric, and seemingly deliberate. From the ground, the stones appear scattered, as if nature and human intention had combined to create a design both intricate and enigmatic. How were these alignments conceived and executed, long before modern surveying instruments? And why select this particular ridge, elevated above the surrounding terrain, as the site for such labor-intensive construction? Archaeologists estimate that the medicine wheel may date from as early as 3200 BC to 800 AD, though dating is imprecise due to the lack of organic material directly associated with the stone arrangements. Its age suggests that multiple generations of indigenous peoples may have used and modified the site, each adding to its complexity. The substructures themselves are intriguing. Smaller stone circles, linear alignments, and cairns dot the surrounding area, some connected to the main wheel by straight lines or subtle axes. Were these auxiliary features intended for ceremonial purposes, marking sacred zones for prayer, meditation, or offerings? Or did they serve more practical functions, perhaps as markers for astronomical observations, seasonal tracking, or navigation across the high plains? The wheel's alignment hints at sophisticated observation of the heavens. Some spokes appear to correspond to sunrise or sunset positions at solstices, equinoxes, or other significant celestial events. Yet the substructures do not always follow the same astronomical logic, suggesting additional overlapping purposes. Could the smaller cairns mark locations of vision quests, hunting rituals, or spiritual ceremonies tied to local geography and cosmology? Perhaps these substructures served as mnemonic devices, encoding oral traditions, calendars, or spiritual knowledge into stone, preserving understanding across generations in a landscape too vast for written records. Constructing the medicine wheel and its substructures would have required careful planning, coordination, and sustained labor. Stones were gathered from the surrounding terrain, transported across uneven ridges, and arranged with precision, forming patterns visible only from certain vantage points or from above. How did the builders conceptualize these designs, and what knowledge guided their placement? Did the wheel and substructures represent a literal map of the world, a sacred cosmos, or a combination of spiritual and practical understanding? The mystery deepens when one considers the scale of the project in a high-altitude environment, exposed to fierce winds, snow, and seasonal extremes, conditions demanding both resilience and purpose from those who labored to create it. The medicine wheel occupies a liminal space in both landscape and time. Its visibility from surrounding ridges and valleys suggests it was meant to be seen, approached, and interacted with, yet the specific rituals, ceremonies, or daily practices performed there remain speculative. Oral histories from Native American communities, particularly the Crow and other Plains tribes, indicate that medicine wheels served as sacred spaces for prayer, vision quests, and seasonal gatherings. Could the Bighorn medicine wheel represent a particularly ancient iteration of these practices whose exact meanings and ceremonies have been partially lost to history? The surrounding substructures add layers of intrigue. Some are aligned with watercourses or natural rock formations. Others form repeating patterns whose significance is unclear. Were these markers of resource territories, pathways for migration, or symbolic representations of cosmological principles? Might they have encoded seasonal cycles for hunting or ceremonial observances, guiding communities across the landscape in synchrony with the heavens? And if so, how much of this knowledge has been preserved in oral traditions, and how much has faded with time, leaving the stones as silent witnesses to forgotten practices? Standing atop the Bighorn Ridge, among the central cairn, spokes, and substructures, one senses both the immensity of the landscape and the subtlety of human intention. The stones, weathered by centuries of wind, snow, and sun, maintain their geometric presence, defying the erosive forces of time while preserving an enigma that continues to challenge modern interpretation. They testify to the ingenuity, observation, and spiritual consciousness of the peoples who built them, yet their full story remains beyond reach. As the sun casts long shadows across the wheel and its radiating lines, the Bighorn medicine wheel and its substructures invite reflection on humanity's enduring desire to understand, order, and communicate with the cosmos. They are both practical and symbolic, physical and metaphysical, a convergence of labor, knowledge, and spiritual aspiration. And as with many prehistoric sites around the world, they leave us with more questions than answers. What guided the placement of each stone? What rituals, observations, or beliefs shaped the design? And what secrets of human understanding remain encoded in these stones, waiting for those who will look carefully enough to perceive them? The medicine wheel stands as a monument to human ingenuity, observation, and spiritual curiosity, a quiet yet profound reminder that the landscapes of our ancestors are often layered with meaning, their stones holding knowledge both tangible and ineffable. And even after millennia, the wheel continues to provoke wonder, inspiring us to consider the intersections of time, place, and the human desire to leave a mark upon the world. From the windswept ridges of Wyoming, where the Bighorn medicine wheel radiates its spokes across the high plains, our journey now takes us across the Atlantic to the sun-drenched island of Sardinia, Italy. Here, amid rolling hills, limestone outcrops, and pastoral landscapes, lie the mysterious Giants' Graves, or Tombe dei Giganti, prehistoric burial monuments whose stone substructures endure as both architectural marvels and enigmatic relics of a civilization long vanished. Unlike grand pyramids or massive stone circles, these graves are elongated, rectangular constructions, their central chambers flanked by upright orthostats, and often covered with enormous stone slabs, while surrounding substructures, rows of smaller stones, terraces, and cairns, form extensions whose purpose remains elusive. At first glance, the giants' graves appear deceptively simple, low, linear mounds stretching tens of meters across the terrain, blending almost seamlessly with the hillsides. Yet closer examination reveals the deliberate placement of megaliths and secondary features. Each orthostat, each substructure, seems to have been carefully positioned, forming sequences and alignments that may have guided movement, ritual, or observation. The scale of these constructions, while modest compared to more famous megalithic monuments, suggests a profound understanding of stone, leverage, and spatial organization. One cannot help but wonder, what compelled these prehistoric communities to dedicate so much labor to structures that functioned simultaneously as tombs, ceremonial spaces, and perhaps markers of identity or cosmology? Dating places the giants' graves broadly between 1800 and 1200 BC within the Bronze Age, associated with the Nuragic civilization. Yet the purpose of the substructures that accompany the central burial chambers remains uncertain. Archaeologists have suggested multiple explanations. Some substructures may have delineated sacred zones, forming perimeters for ritual activity, while others could have served as symbolic markers of ancestral presence or territorial boundaries. Could the rows of smaller stones have encoded social hierarchies, genealogies, or cosmological beliefs? Or did they function as ceremonial avenues, guiding participants toward the central tomb during funerary rites. The spatial arrangement of these substructures is striking. In some sites, linear sequences extend from the tomb, pointing toward distant hills, watercourses, or celestial features. Other complexes cluster smaller stones around the main chamber, creating terraces or enclosures that frame the landscape in a deliberate way. Such planning implies not only technical skill but also an awareness of geography and observation, an understanding of how human constructions interact with natural light, topography, and horizon lines. Were these alignments intended to track solar or lunar movements, or were they symbolic markers, translating spiritual and societal concepts into the language of stone? The labor involved in erecting and arranging these stones was immense. Local limestone or sandstone blocks, some weighing several tons, were quarried, transported, and positioned without the benefit of modern tools. Coordinating such efforts would have required social organization, communal labor, and knowledge passed through generations. What cultural imperatives drove this effort? Ritual devotion, ancestral veneration, or a combination of social and spiritual necessity? And how much knowledge of astronomy, geomancy, or landscape observation informed the placement of the substructures? Excavations at several sites have uncovered pottery, tools, and skeletal remains, confirming the funerary function of the central tombs. Yet the secondary structures, terraces, and rows of stones often yield little direct evidence of use, leaving their purpose open to interpretation. Could they have served as ceremonial platforms, spaces for offerings, or observational markers? Some researchers propose that they functioned as memory landscapes, encoding knowledge, lineage, or cosmological principles for those who interacted with them. But without written records, these theories remain speculative, grounded only in observation, analogy, and inference. The surrounding Sardinian landscape offers both context and mystery. The graves often occupy elevated positions, overlooking valleys and water sources, with panoramic views of hills and mountains. Such placement suggests that visibility, sight lines, and interaction with the natural environment were important considerations. Could the substructures have been used to integrate the tombs into a larger ritual landscape, connecting burial sites, settlements, and sacred spaces across the island? And if so, what might this tell us about the spiritual or social organization of the Nuragic people who created them? Standing among the stone mounds and their attendant substructures, one senses a deliberate dialogue between human labor and the natural world. The giants' graves are more than burial sites. They are statements of presence, memory, and perhaps identity, each stone and row representing intention, reverence, or knowledge. Yet for all the effort and precision evident in their construction, the full meaning remains tantalizingly out of reach. How were these spaces used in life, death, and ritual? What knowledge of the cosmos, the seasons, or the ancestral past guided the design? And what other secrets lie hidden beneath the surface, waiting for archaeologists, historians, or explorers to uncover? As sunlight bathes the hills, casting long shadows across the terraces, rows of orthostats, and central chambers, the giants' graves endure as silent witnesses to human ingenuity, devotion, and imagination. The substructures, subtle yet deliberate, invite reflection on the ways prehistoric societies interacted with their environment, structured sacred space, and communicated beliefs across generations. They remind us that human history is as much about what is intentionally left behind in stone and earth as it is about written records or monumental architecture. The giants' graves, substructures, are enduring enigmas, bridging the practical and the symbolic, the temporal and the eternal. They speak to the human desire to leave a mark upon the world, to honor ancestors, to codify knowledge, and to integrate ritual, landscape, and community. And even after millennia, they continue to provoke questions rather than provide answers. What hidden patterns, observances, or meanings remain encoded in these stones? How much more of the neurologic worldview remains unreadable to us, quietly embedded in the Sardinian landscape? From the sun-drenched hills of Sardinia, where the giants' graves rise in elongated mounds, their substructures silently recording millennia of ritual, memory, and human intention. Our journey now sweeps across continents and oceans to the rugged landscapes of Argentina. In the Sierra de las Quijadas, a dramatic network of canyons, plateaus, and dry riverbeds stretches as far as the eye can see, offering a harsh yet mesmerizing terrain where prehistoric people left subtle traces of their presence. Stone platforms whose purpose remains as elusive today as it must have been to those who first built them. Perched atop cliffs, nestled in plateaus, or extending along the slopes of eroded valleys, these platforms form a tapestry of human ingenuity interwoven with nature, a landscape quietly shaped by labor, observation, and perhaps belief. At first glance, the stone platforms appear deceptively simple, low, flat terraces of roughly aligned stones, often rectangular or trapezoidal in shape. Yet even in their simplicity, they suggest a deliberate interaction with the land. Some are positioned to catch the first light of dawn, while others overlook deep ravines and winding riverbeds. From certain angles, the platforms reveal careful grading, subtle leveling, and arrangements that indicate more than functional construction. They hint at spatial awareness, environmental adaptation, and possibly symbolic or ceremonial intent. Why, one must ask, did these early builders invest such care and effort into creating flat stone expanses in such a rugged, challenging terrain? Archaeologists studying the region estimate that many of these platforms date to the late Holocene, perhaps 2000 to 1000 BC, though precise dating is difficult due to the scarcity of organic material directly associated with construction. The platforms appear in clusters, often accompanied by small cairns, linear alignments, or scattered stone markers that suggest a broader network of use and significance. Were these clusters ceremonial centers, communal gathering spaces, or observational points designed to align with the movement of the sun, moon, or stars? Or did they serve practical purposes, such as agricultural terraces, foundations for ephemeral structures, or staging areas for hunting activities? The evidence remains tantalizingly open to interpretation. The placement of the stone platforms in Sierra de las Quijadas demonstrates an intimate understanding of the natural environment. Builders selected locations with commanding views, access to water sources, and stable stone outcrops, suggesting both strategic thinking and an aesthetic or symbolic sensibility. Could the platforms have functioned as elevated stages for rituals, observation points for celestial events, or markers guiding movement across the complex topography? Some platforms are aligned in ways that suggest intentional orientation, possibly along axes connecting distant landmarks, sunrises at solstices, or river confluences. Yet, without contemporaneous records, these interpretations remain speculative, highlighting the gap between human intention and modern understanding. The construction of the platforms required careful labor, coordination, and the movement of sizable stones across uneven terrain. Some platforms extend for tens of meters, leveled meticulously to create flat surfaces, while others form smaller, precise rectangles that could accommodate gatherings, structures, or ceremonies. How were these efforts organized? Did local communities plan and construct them collectively over generations? Or were specialized groups tasked with specific designs? And if they were ceremonial in purpose, what beliefs, cosmologies, or social structures informed their design, orientation, and placement? Interestingly, many platforms appear connected to watercourses or ephemeral streams, their positioning suggesting an awareness of seasonal cycles and environmental patterns. Could the builders have used these alignments to track rainfall, river flow, or the timing of seasonal migration for animals? Alternatively, might the proximity to water have had symbolic significance, linking life, sustenance, and ritual in ways that we can only speculate upon? The interplay of natural and human-made elements creates a landscape where every stone, every leveled terrace, seems to resonate with intention, even if its precise meaning remains beyond our reach. Some researchers have proposed that the Sierra de las Quijadas platforms form part of a broader network of prehistoric spatial planning in South America. Patterns of placement, orientation, and clustering hint at knowledge of geometry, observation, and environmental management. Could the platforms represent early experiments in territorial demarcation, astronomical observation, or communal coordination? Perhaps they served multiple functions simultaneously: practical, symbolic, and ceremonial, a common characteristic of prehistoric structures whose meanings are layered and multifaceted. The scale of the effort, combined with the subtlety of the construction, distinguishes these platforms from other megalithic sites around the world. They are not monumental in height or visually imposing, yet they convey sophistication in design, orientation, and integration with the environment. Unlike the conspicuous grandeur of pyramids or stone circles, these platforms invite careful observation, rewarding patience and attentive study. What might this subtlety tell us about the worldview of their builders? Were these landscapes intended for select members of the community, or were they meant to blend with nature, accessible only to those who understood their significance? Standing atop one of the elevated terraces today, the eye can follow a panoramic sweep of canyons, cliffs, and plateaus, imagining the presence of ancient builders who shaped the stone with purpose and vision. The terraces, substructures, and alignments provoke thought. What daily, seasonal, or ceremonial activities took place here? How did these platforms mediate the relationship between human communities and the vast, challenging environment? And how much more of this prehistoric ingenuity remains hidden beneath vegetation, sediment, or centuries of erosion waiting to be uncovered? The Sierra de las Quijadas stone platforms endure as silent witnesses to human innovation, adaptation, and perhaps spiritual expression. They remind us that prehistoric people were keen observers of the land, capable of shaping it with care, foresight, and creativity. And yet, for all the labor and intelligence evident in their construction, the full meaning remains elusive. What patterns of thought, cosmology, or social organization are encoded in these terraces? How much of their knowledge has been lost to time, and how much might still be recovered through careful study and imagination? As the sun sinks toward the horizon, casting long shadows across leveled stones and rugged cliffs, the Sierra de las Quijadas platforms stand as enduring enigmas, a landscape transformed by human hands, yet still holding its secrets. They challenge us to consider the interplay between environment, labor, and meaning in prehistoric life, inviting us to look closely, question assumptions, and wonder about the intentions of those who first walked these terraces thousands of years ago. In the quiet of the Argentinian plains, among terraces carved from rock and aligned with the rhythms of the land, the stone platforms of Sierra de las Quijadas endure, monuments to ingenuity, mystery, and the human impulse to leave a mark upon the world. And even now, millennia later, they continue to ask questions rather than provide answers. What else might be hidden, waiting for those who seek to understand the silent, deliberate language of stone? From the sun-scorched plateaus and sculpted terraces of Sierra de las Quijadas, where prehistoric stone platforms hint at careful planning, ritual, and observation, our journey now moves northward to the heart of the Mexican highlands. Here, in the semi-arid valleys near San Miguel de Allende, the Cañada de la Virgen lower complex rises quietly from the landscape, a series of stone constructions whose purpose and origin continue to provoke intrigue and wonder. At first glance, the lower complex seems modest compared to the towering pyramids and ceremonial centers of Mesoamerica, yet its sophistication lies in its subtlety. Carefully leveled platforms, stone enclosures, and interconnected terraces arranged across the gently sloping valley floor, each aligned with remarkable precision. The site sits within a narrow canyon, flanked by low hills and distant volcanic peaks, providing sweeping views of the surrounding valleys. The lower complex consists of multiple stone platforms, some rectangular, others trapezoidal, connected by a network of terraces and low retaining walls. These structures, constructed from local limestone and volcanic stone, create spaces that are simultaneously functional, ceremonial, and symbolic. Walk among the platforms today, and one senses a deliberate ordering of space. Pathways leading from one terrace to the next, stone boundaries guiding movement, and carefully leveled surfaces that suggest purpose beyond mere habitation. Could these have served as ceremonial areas, gathering spaces for astronomical observation, or sites for the commemoration of ancestors? Archaeological evidence places the lower complex within the larger context of the Otomi Chichimeca cultures, with construction dates estimated around 540 to 1050 AD. While these dates situate the site firmly in the late Classic to early post-Classic period of Mesoamerican history, the specific functions of the platforms and terraces remain enigmatic. Excavations have uncovered a mixture of domestic artifacts, ceremonial offerings, and human remains, indicating that the lower complex was used for multiple purposes over generations. Yet the arrangement and orientation of the substructures hint at an understanding of space, light, and time that transcends simple utilitarian function. How did these early builders perceive the world around them, and what knowledge guided the placement of each stone, each terrace, each retaining wall? One of the most compelling features of the lower complex is its alignment with celestial events. Certain terraces and platforms appear to correlate with the movement of the sun and moon at solstices, equinoxes, and other key points in the solar calendar. Could these alignments have allowed observers to track seasonal changes, agricultural cycles, or ritual dates? Perhaps the platforms served as stages for ceremonies timed with these celestial events, where priests, shamans, or community leaders interpreted the skies to guide the lives of those below. Yet many alignments remain subtle, difficult to perceive without careful observation, suggesting that the creators encoded their knowledge in ways designed for the initiated or for those who shared a deep understanding of the surrounding environment. The lower complex is also integrated into the natural landscape in ways that suggest both practicality and symbolism. Stone terraces follow the contours of the canyon floor, while retaining walls stabilize sloped areas and create elevated platforms that command a view of the valley. The choice of building material, local stone, anchors the site to its environment, linking human construction to the geology and topography of the region. Could the very act of shaping the land, of leveling terraces and erecting walls, have been a form of symbolic communication, asserting control over the environment while simultaneously respecting its inherent structure? Construction of the lower complex would have required considerable labor and coordination. Stones were quarried, transported, and placed with precision. Terraces were leveled and reinforced. Retaining walls were engineered to endure centuries of erosion and seasonal rainfall. The scale and care of the construction imply communal organization and planning, suggesting that the lower complex was not a single generation's project, but a site built and maintained across decades or centuries. What social structures, belief systems, and communal priorities supported such sustained effort? And how did these societies transmit knowledge of construction techniques, ceremonial practice, and landscape observation without written language, relying instead on oral tradition, shared experience, and careful observation. The arrangement of substructures within the lower complex raises further questions. Some platforms are isolated, others clustered, with smaller stone enclosures adjacent to the larger terraces. Were these minor structures functional, perhaps supporting domestic activities, workshops, or storage? Or were they ceremonial, marking specific rites or ritual pathways? Could the entire complex have functioned as a kind of observatory, where movement across terraces mirrored cosmological patterns, or where ceremonial activities reflected cycles of life, death, and renewal? Each possibility opens a window into the cognitive world of its builders, revealing a culture deeply attuned to environment, time, and symbolism. Equally intriguing is the spatial relationship between the lower complex and other nearby sites. The lower complex does not exist in isolation. It is part of a broader network of settlements, ceremonial centers, and ritual spaces across the highlands. Some scholars suggest that the placement of the platforms and terraces reflects not only local topography, but also regional connections, forming pathways or lines of sight linking distant sites. Could this indicate an early form of landscape planning, where sacred and functional spaces were interconnected across valleys and ridges? And if so, what knowledge or belief system guided these connections, creating a network of meaning and memory across a vast territory? Walking the lower complex today, one feels the interplay between the monumental and the subtle. The terraces, platforms, and retaining walls are not imposing in the way of pyramids or stone circles, yet they speak of a keen understanding of geometry, observation, and communal organization. The site invites quiet reflection. The alignment of a platform with the rising sun, the careful leveling of stone for a gathering space, the interplay of light and shadow across terraces at different times of year. Each feature suggests intention, yet the specific motivations, ritual, practical, or symbolic, remain just beyond our grasp. The lower complex also encourages us to consider the relationship between human activity and the environment. In this semi-arid valley, resources were limited, and the effort to shape stone terraces represents not only technical skill, but also adaptation, foresight, and possibly a spiritual connection to the land. Could the very act of building in harmony with the contours of the canyon have been a form of communication with natural and celestial forces, embedding human intention within a broader cosmology? And how much of this knowledge has been lost to time, leaving only subtle traces in stone, orientation, and spatial patterning? As the sun sinks behind distant volcanic peaks, casting long shadows across leveled terraces and stone platforms, the lower complex endures as both monument and mystery. Its substructures, seemingly ordinary at first glance, reveal the sophistication, ingenuity, and subtle intentionality of its builders. And yet, for all we can observe, many questions remain unanswered. What precise rituals took place here? How were the terraces and platforms integrated into daily, seasonal, or ceremonial life? And how much knowledge of astronomy, geography, and communal organization remains encoded in stone, waiting to be deciphered by those who study the site carefully enough to perceive its hidden patterns? The Cañada de la Virgen Lower Complex is a testament to human creativity, adaptation, and the enduring desire to engage with the cosmos, landscape, and community. Its terraces and substructures form a quiet, enigmatic language in stone, one that continues to challenge our understanding, inspire reflection, and invite inquiry. Even today, the site asks us to look more closely, to question, and to wonder what secrets lie hidden in these platforms and terraces, waiting to reveal the minds and intentions of the people who shaped them thousands of years ago? From the sunlit terraces and celestial alignments of Cañada de la Virgen, where the Otomi Chichimeca builders left their mark in stone, our exploration now turns northward to the rich alluvial plains of northeastern Louisiana. Here, amid the winding courses of the Mississippi River and its tributaries, the enigmatic Poverty Point site emerges, a landscape of earthworks whose scale, precision, and antiquity continue to astonish archaeologists and historians alike. Beyond the central mounds and concentric ridges lies a series of satellite mounds, smaller yet no less intriguing, scattered across the floodplain in deliberate patterns, their origins and purpose still wrapped in mystery. At first glance, the satellite mounds appear modest compared to the monumental central embankments of Poverty Point, yet their subtle presence hints at complexity. Each mound is a carefully constructed platform of earth and clay, shaped into low, rounded forms that rise several meters above the surrounding landscape. Built from layers of meticulously compacted soil, these mounds exhibit a level of planning and labor investment that defies simple explanation. How were these seemingly small elevations integrated into the broader ceremonial and habitation landscape of Poverty Point? Were they functional markers, ritual sites, or symbolic statements woven into a larger cosmology? Poverty Point, with its construction dating between 1700 and 1100 BC, predates many of the more widely recognized mound-building cultures of North America. Yet, the sophistication of its builders is unmistakable. The satellite mounds, like the central ridges, required extraordinary effort. Thousands of labor hours were devoted to transporting and shaping tons of soil, often over long distances without the aid of metal tools or draft animals. This indicates an organized society capable of planning, cooperation, and knowledge transmission across generations. How did these ancient communities coordinate such monumental efforts? And what social, spiritual, or practical imperatives drove them to alter the landscape with such precision? The placement of the satellite mounds appears neither random nor purely utilitarian. Many sit in relation to the central plaza, forming visual corridors and alignments that could have defined ceremonial space, guided processions, or marked territorial or cosmological boundaries. From certain vantage points, the mounds form apparent radial patterns, echoing the concentric arcs of the central ridges. Could these alignments have been designed to mirror celestial events, track seasonal changes, or encode information about the cycles of the sun and moon? Some researchers suggest that the satellite mounds may have functioned as observation points, elevated spaces from which the movements of stars and planets could be noted, guiding agricultural activity or ritual timing. Excavations of the satellite mounds have revealed artifacts, including stone tools, exotic raw materials, and remnants of feasting or ceremonial activity. Yet the evidence is often fragmentary, leaving the interpretation of their function open to debate. Were these mounds primarily ceremonial, serving as platforms for gatherings, offerings, or dances? Could they have been markers of social hierarchy, delineating spaces for different clans or lineages within the community? Or did they serve multiple functions simultaneously, blending practicality, spirituality, and social organization into a cohesive landscape? The absence of written records forces modern observers to rely on careful observation, analogy, and inference, leaving the full meaning tantalizingly out of reach. The relationship of the satellite mounds to the environment adds another layer of complexity. Constructed on floodplains, often near natural levees, these mounds demonstrate a deep understanding of hydrology and topography. Builders manipulated the landscape to create elevated, stable platforms in a region prone to seasonal flooding, suggesting both practical foresight and ritual significance. Could the positioning of these mounds have symbolized dominion over the land, a sacred claim upon the floodplain? Or might they have been sites for observing the rise and fall of waters, integrating the rhythms of the natural world into social and ceremonial life? The construction techniques of the satellite mounds reveal careful layering of materials, alternating deposits of clay, sand, and silt, compacted to create stable terraces. In some cases, Post holes or stone features suggest structures may have once adorned the summit, perhaps serving as ceremonial edifices, ritual stages, or observational platforms. The labor-intensive process, executed without metal tools, reflects a culture with not only technical skill, but also an understanding of long-term stability, engineering, and the interplay between form and function. What motivated this meticulous attention to detail? Was it practical, spiritual, or a fusion of both? A reflection of a worldview in which human activity and cosmic order were inseparably linked? The satellite mounds are also intriguing when considered in the broader context of the Poverty Point site. Together with the central ridges and plaza, they form a coherent landscape of movement, visibility, and spatial hierarchy. Paths and corridors between mounds suggest controlled access, guiding participants through the ceremonial landscape in ways that may have mirrored cosmological or social principles. Could the satellite mounds have served as thresholds, marking the transition from mundane to sacred space? Or perhaps they encoded knowledge about the surrounding terrain, seasonal cycles, or astronomical phenomena, creating a living map of both the physical and spiritual worlds. Walking among the satellite mounds today, one cannot escape a sense of deliberate intention. The low earthen platforms, the subtle gradations of height, the orientations across the floodplain, they speak of a culture deeply attuned to landscape, sky, and community, yet their meaning remains frustratingly opaque. What rituals, ceremonies, or observances unfolded atop these mounds? How did these spaces interact with the central embankments, the plaza, and the river beyond? And what knowledge of the heavens, the seasons, or the cycles of life was encoded in the placement and construction of these features? The satellite mounds, though smaller than the central structures, challenge our assumptions about prehistoric societies in North America. They reveal a sophisticated understanding of landscape engineering, social organization, and perhaps even cosmology. Their placement suggests foresight, intention, and a vision that integrated human activity with natural rhythms. And yet, after nearly 3 millennia, much of their purpose remains undeciphered, leaving modern observers to piece together the interplay of observation, labor, and symbolism from the traces preserved in earth and stone. As the Mississippi River winds through the distant floodplains, casting a mirror of the sky across its waters, the Poverty Point satellite mounds endure as silent witnesses to human ingenuity and mystery. They remind us that even small, seemingly humble structures can encode extraordinary knowledge, ambition, and cultural meaning. And while archaeologists continue to excavate, measure, and analyze the full story of these mounds, how they were used, why they were aligned as they are, and what they meant to those who built them, remains elusive. Could they hold secrets about social organization, astronomical observation, or ritual practice yet undiscovered? And how much more of the landscape, now hidden beneath centuries of sediment and vegetation, awaits rediscovery? The satellite mounds of Poverty Point challenge our perceptions of prehistoric architecture. They are subtle, yet deliberate, small, yet monumental in purpose, silent, yet suggestive of complex social and cosmological systems. They invite reflection on the capacity of ancient societies to plan, observe, and manipulate space in ways that harmonize with both practical and spiritual needs. Each mound stands as a question, a marker of human intention, and an enduring puzzle for those who seek to understand the ingenuity of North America's earliest mound builders. As the sun sets over the floodplain, painting the earth in hues of gold and shadow, the satellite mounds remain quiet, enigmatic, and profoundly human. They call on us to observe carefully, to question relentlessly, and to marvel at the subtle genius of those who, thousands of years ago, reshaped the landscape in ways that continue to speak to our curiosity and wonder. And perhaps, somewhere within these modest earthen forms, lie the keys to understanding the rituals, observations, and aspirations of a people whose vision has survived time in stone, earth, and alignment. From the low earthen mounds of Poverty Point, where ancient builders shaped the landscape with subtle precision and mysterious intent, our journey now moves across the Atlantic to the mist-shrouded fells of northern England. Here, in the Lake District, near Keswick, lies Castlerig, a site renowned for its imposing stone circles, but even less visible and perhaps even more enigmatic are the subterranean chambers that lie beneath the landscape. These underground spaces, carved and arranged with care, hint at prehistoric ingenuity, ceremonial purpose, and knowledge that has long since faded from memory. They are silent witnesses to a world in which stone, earth, and human intention intersected in ways we are only beginning to appreciate. Approaching the chambers today, one notices the subtle rise of the land. The surface is dotted with weathered stones, patches of heather, and grassy undulations that betray the presence of hidden voids beneath. Step closer, and the contours suggest carefully constructed entrances and low passageways leading into the earth, their form at once inviting and forbidding. The subterranean chambers are not vast. Their scale is intimate, requiring those who enter to stoop, to navigate narrow passages, to engage physically with the earth itself. This intimacy may have been intentional, designed to evoke a sense of transition from the ordinary world above to a liminal sacred space below, where the everyday and the cosmological intersect. Castlerig has long been associated with prehistoric activity, with the stone circle above dating to approximately 3000 BC, placing it in the early Neolithic. While much research has focused on the above-ground formations, the subterranean chambers remain less explored, their origins and functions cloaked in uncertainty. Were these chambers built contemporaneously with the surface circle, forming an integrated ceremonial complex? Or were they later additions, reflecting evolving ritual practices and spatial needs? Some scholars propose that the chambers were used for burial, for initiation, or for the storage of sacred objects, while others suggest more abstract functions, astronomical observation, ritual confinement, or symbolic representation of the underworld. The evidence is fragmentary, leaving the chamber's precise purpose tantalizingly elusive. The construction of these chambers demonstrates remarkable technical skill for the period. Massive stones were carefully positioned to create stable walls and ceilings, while passages were dug to precise dimensions, allowing access without collapse. The builders understood the properties of the local slate and gritstone, exploiting their strength to create enduring subterranean spaces. Could the labor-intensive process of constructing these chambers itself have been part of the ritual? A form of devotion expressed through movement, coordination, and transformation of the landscape. Each stone placed, each passage excavated required forethought, cooperation, and a vision that extended beyond the immediate present into generations yet to come. One of the most compelling mysteries of the Castlerig chambers lies in their orientation. Certain passages and alignments seem to correspond with solar and lunar events, rises and settings, solstices and equinoxes. Could the chambers have served as observatories, allowing Neolithic people to track celestial cycles from within the earth, hidden from plain view? Or perhaps the alignments were symbolic, linking subterranean spaces to cosmic events in a way that was meant to be understood only by initiated participants. The very act of descending into the earth, of moving through narrow passages at precise angles, might have represented a journey through time, seasons, or spiritual realms, reflecting a worldview in which the underground and the heavens were intimately connected. Archaeological surveys have revealed the presence of human remains, pottery fragments, and flint tools within the chambers. Yet the pattern of deposition is puzzling. Artifacts are often placed in seemingly deliberate but unexplained arrangements. Are these offerings, remnants of burial rites, or markers of social hierarchy? Or could they represent a form of symbolic mapping, where objects, bodies, and spaces encode knowledge about lineage, territory, or cosmology? The ambiguity invites speculation and reflection. Even in the absence of definitive explanation, we sense that the chambers were deeply meaningful, spaces where the physical, social, and spiritual converged. The chambers also invite consideration of sound, light, and sensory experience. Descend a passageway, and one feels the echo of footsteps against stone, the faint dampness of the earth, the shifting angles of light from narrow openings. Could these sensory elements have been intentionally exploited by the builders, amplifying ritual significance, guiding perception, or evoking altered states of consciousness? In many prehistoric cultures, architecture itself, its scale, proportion, and orientation, was a medium of meaning, not simply a backdrop. The castle-rigged chambers, with their subterranean intimacy, seem to embody this principle, transforming ordinary materials into spaces of heightened awareness. Equally intriguing is the relationship between the subterranean chambers and the surface landscape. The chambers are positioned beneath hills, adjacent to watercourses, and in proximity to the stone circle above. Could this indicate a deliberate dialogue between surface and subterranean spaces, a cosmological conversation between the world above and the hidden realms below? Some researchers suggest that the arrangement may have functioned as a journey through cosmological planes, with participants moving from the open communal circle above to the private liminal chambers below, experiencing a transition from public ritual to sacred secrecy. Each movement, each orientation, each passage may have carried layers of meaning, visible only to those attuned to the symbolic logic of the landscape. The castle-rigged subterranean chambers are also notable for what they leave unspoken. Unlike tombs adorned with carvings or murals, these spaces rely on form, placement, and material to communicate. The absence of overt decoration does not diminish their significance. Rather, it amplifies the mystery. How did the builders convey meaning in the interplay of stone, space, and passage? Were certain chambers reserved for elites, initiates, or spiritual leaders? Did the architecture itself function as mnemonic, encoding knowledge of astronomical cycles, seasonal patterns, or social laws? And if so, how much of that knowledge has been lost to time, leaving only these enduring stone forms as witnesses? Walking through the chambers today, one is struck by a profound sense of continuity and silence. The stones are unadorned, the passages narrow, yet the effect is powerful. The chambers create a feeling of immersion in both time and space, linking us, in some small measure, to the hands and minds of Neolithic people. Their labor, intention, and observation are embedded in every joint, every passage, every carefully placed boulder. Yet, for all that can be measured, observed, or hypothesized, much remains beyond comprehension. What rituals unfolded here? What knowledge of the cosmos, of life and death, of social hierarchy, and of human environmental interaction was encoded in these chambers? And how did the builders experience the spaces themselves, knowing that their constructions would endure far longer than their own lifetimes? The castle-rigged subterranean chambers remind us that human ingenuity is not always grand in scale. Sometimes it is quiet, precise, and hidden, demanding contemplation and attention. Their construction demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of engineering, spatial reasoning, and ceremonial function. Their placement suggests a worldview that integrated earth, sky, and community into a coherent, symbolic landscape. And their enduring mystery challenges us, inviting reflection, speculation, and humility. Even when structures endure for millennia, their full meaning may remain tantalizingly out of reach. As the mist curls across the fells and shadows lengthen over the stone circle above, the subterranean chambers lie in silence, enduring as both enigma and testament. They call on us to observe closely, to question thoughtfully, and to wonder about the minds, beliefs, and knowledge of those who shaped the land in ways that continue to inspire awe. Perhaps, somewhere within the narrow passages, the careful alignments, and the unyielding stone, lie secrets that could illuminate the lives, cosmos, and ceremonies of a people whose vision has persisted in earth and rock for over 5 millennia. From the misty fells of northern England, where stone circles and subterranean chambers speak in whispers of ancient ritual, our journey now stretches southward across oceans and continents to the high Andes of Peru. Above the city of Cusco, where the river valleys weave through rugged mountains, stands Sacsayhuaman, a monumental complex of megalithic walls and terraces that has long captivated scholars, travelers, and those attuned to the mysteries of the ancient world. Among its many features, the circular towers of Sacsayhuaman stand out, enigmatic in form, precise in construction, and mysterious in purpose. Rising like sentinels from the terraced slopes, these towers hint at architectural knowledge and ceremonial intention that continues to defy simple explanation. The circular towers are constructed from enormous stones, each meticulously shaped and fitted to create walls of astonishing stability. Some megaliths weigh several tons, yet they interlock with such precision that even a blade of grass cannot slip between them. The towers themselves are arranged across the complex in positions that command the surrounding landscape, overlooking valleys, riverbeds, and mountain ridges. From a distance, they appear almost organic, as if the builders coaxed the stones from the earth to form shapes that harmonize with the contours of the terrain. How did ancient hands manage to manipulate such massive stones without modern tools, and what knowledge of geometry, leverage, and balance guided their placement? Sacsayhuaman is typically associated with the Inca civilization, with construction dating roughly to the 15th century AD, yet the circular towers pose questions that transcend conventional timelines. Their precise stonework, unusual curvature, and strategic orientation suggest that their builders possessed advanced knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and perhaps even acoustics. Could these towers have served defensive purposes, ceremonial functions, or a combination of both? Some scholars propose that they were watchtowers, designed to guard the approaches to the city, while others suggest that their circular design reflects cosmological or ritual significance, echoing patterns found in sacred geometry and celestial observation. Walking among the towers today, one senses a deliberate orchestration of space. The pathways between towers, the interplay of light and shadow across the stones, and the vantage points that command views of the valleys below all suggest intentionality. Certain towers align with natural features on distant mountain peaks, potentially marking solstices or equinoxes, or serving as reference points for calendrical and agricultural cycles. Could the circular towers have acted as observatories, where Inca priests or astronomers interpreted the movements of the sun, moon, and stars to guide ceremonial practice and civic life? The evidence is fragmentary, but the precision of construction leaves little doubt that these structures were designed with knowledge far beyond mere utility. The sheer size of the stones and the sophistication of their placement also raise questions about labor organization, social hierarchy, and engineering methods. Each block had to be quarried, transported, shaped, and set in position, a task demanding careful planning, coordination, and an intimate understanding of both material and landscape. How did these societies coordinate such monumental construction projects without written blueprints or mechanical advantage as we understand it today? And what knowledge of physics, leverage, and geometric principles did they transmit orally or through apprenticeship to accomplish feats that continue to challenge modern engineers? Equally compelling is the materiality of the towers. Many stones bear subtle depressions and curves, carved so precisely that they fit snugly against their neighbors. The circular shapes suggest more than mere practicality. They may encode symbolic or ritual significance. Some researchers speculate that the towers were designed to amplify sound, creating echoes or resonances during ceremonies that would have enhanced the sensory experience of participants. Could the curvature of the walls and the placement of stones have been part of a deliberate orchestration of sight and sound, blending architecture with ritual in ways that we can scarcely imagine? The towers also sit within a broader spatial and ceremonial landscape. They interact with the adjacent terraces, ramparts, and plazas, forming a network of interconnected spaces that guides movement, observation, and experience. The circular towers may have marked the thresholds between sacred and profane, between communal gathering areas and spaces reserved for elites or ritual specialists. Did participants ascend terraces and circle the towers in ceremonial procession, moving through a narrative encoded in stone, sky, and topography? And if so, how much of this knowledge has been lost to time, leaving only the stones themselves as witnesses to practices that may have encompassed astronomy, cosmology, and social order? The question of purpose extends beyond ritual and observation. Some scholars suggest that the circular towers were part of a defensive strategy, leveraging the natural steepness of the terrain and the strength of the stone walls to control access to Cusco. Others propose that their shape allowed for symbolic representation of the cosmos, reflecting circular cosmologies found throughout Andean culture, where the cyclical nature of time and the alignment of human activity with celestial patterns were deeply intertwined. Could the towers have served both purposes simultaneously? Practical defense, ceremonial focus, and cosmological representation, all folded into a single architectural expression? Archaeological excavations and surveys have revealed fewer artifacts within the circular towers than in the terraces and plazas, suggesting that their function may have been more spatial or observational than domestic or ceremonial in the conventional sense. Yet their presence, scale, and precision cannot be dismissed as decorative. They were engineered for purpose, designed to endure, and situated with an acute awareness of the surrounding environment. Could they have functioned as markers of territorial control, centers for celestial observation, or even instruments of social cohesion, drawing communities together around shared knowledge and ritual practice? The circular towers also prompt reflection on the cognitive and cultural sophistication of their builders. The construction required not only technical skill, but also planning, long-term vision, and understanding of human movement, sight lines, and spatial relationships. Each tower, each stone, and each terrace suggests deliberate intention, an expression of values, cosmology, and social order encoded in architecture. And yet, for all their clarity of construction, the towers leave their specific meaning tantalizingly out of reach. How did the builders conceive of these structures? How did they interact with them, move among them, and understand their relation to the surrounding landscape, sky, and river valleys? Walking among the towers today, one is struck by a sense of both monumentality and subtlety. The stones are massive, yet the overall arrangement conveys harmony with the natural topography, a careful choreography of elevation, line of sight, and curvature. The circular forms, unusual for the region, evoke questions about the interplay of function, symbolism, and ritual. Were these towers designed to be seen from above, from within, or both? And what messages or knowledge were they intended to communicate to observers, participants, or initiates moving through the complex? Sacsayhuaman's circular towers, like the broader megalithic landscape of Peru, challenge our understanding of prehistoric architecture. They reveal technical mastery, spatial intelligence, and cultural sophistication that cannot be fully captured in words alone. They embody an intersection of landscape, labor, and cosmology, where stone is transformed into a language of intention, observation, and memory. And while we can measure dimensions, examine alignments, and study construction techniques, the lived experience of the towers, the ceremonies, the observations, the human and spiritual engagement remains largely hidden, encoded in subtle forms that have survived millennia. As the sun dips behind the Andes, casting elongated shadows across terraces and towers, the circular structures of Sacsayhuaman endure as both marvel and mystery. They invite reflection, careful observation, and wonder. Each stone, each curve, each alignment asks us to consider the knowledge, vision, and ritual life of those who shaped this remarkable complex. And while much remains unknown, the precise purposes, the full cosmological significance, and the experiential impact, the towers continue to speak across centuries, a quiet testimony to human ingenuity, adaptation, and enduring curiosity. What secrets of astronomy, ceremony, or social organization lie hidden within their circular forms, waiting to be perceived by those who approach with patience, care, and imagination?
One cannot overlook the relationship between these structures and the daily life of the society that built them. The circular towers, with their precise geometry and imposing presence, were likely more than instruments of defense or observation. They may have served as focal points within a complex network of social and ceremonial activity. Their locations could have guided movement across terraces and plazas, shaping communal experiences and directing attention toward the surrounding landscape. In this way, the towers transform from static stone structures into dynamic elements of a lived environment, connecting seasonal cycles, social gatherings, and cosmic knowledge. Every stone, every curve, and every carefully chosen position speaks to a dialogue between humans and their surroundings. A dialogue that continues to echo across the centuries, whispered by the mountains and valleys themselves.